unless you do direct broadcasts and have many, many ground stations, which isn't as effective as going through the TDRS system.
The White Sands ground station then sends information about the health and geolocation of the GPM core satellite to the hub of all of this activity, the Missions Operations Center, located at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. The raw data streams into Goddard's Precipitation Processing System, or PPS. The data from the radar is routed through GPM's partner, the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, for initial processing, and then is sent back to the PPS.
The data that come down from the satellite are actually not precipitation. They're in the form of radiances in the case of the microwave instruments, or reflectivities in the case of the radar. The computer codes I've been talking about, the algorithms, are the way we get from numbers that nobody, including me, can directly interpret to the thing that we care about, which is precipitation.
The GPM mission is not just the core spacecraft, but also a constellation of existing satellites from partners around the world. Each constellation member may have its own unique scientific objectives, but they all contribute data to the PPS in order to develop global precipitation products.
Precipitation processing system gets data from the satellite and various other sources and creates the science products that are going to be used for both applications purposes, that is societal benefits, and scientific research.
The PPS then produces a suite of data products, including both instrument-specific and merged data, unifying the data gathered by the international partner satellites that make up the GPM constellation.
You could compare this to making soup. We have carrots, and we have onions, and we have potatoes. They're all vegetables, and so you have to wash them, peel them, take out the bad spots. That's a really important step. You don't want your soup to taste bad. When you get done, of course, you have to taste test it to make sure you have the seasoning right, and then you have to serve it. And so each of those steps, in a mathematical sense, is what we have to do in order to take all the diverse sources of information and end up with a unified product which the user finds to be useful.
These precipitation products will be useful in many societal applications, like hydrologic modeling, mapping potential natural disasters, agricultural monitoring, weather prediction, and climate research.
As we improve the precipitation retrievals that form the basis for these merged products, that will get better and better, and we'll be seeing actual satellite data rather than just forecasts.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order this Tuesday, August 20th meeting of the Pierce County Council. It is Tuesday, August 20th, 2024. The time is 3:04 p.m. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Campbell.
Here.
Councilmember Krueger.
Here.
Councilmember Denson.
Here.
Councilmember Herrera.
Here.
Councilmember Hitchin.
Here.
Councilmember Morrell.
Here.
Councilmember Mello.
Here.
You have 7 members present.
We have all 7 members present and a quorum. Item number 3 is our Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, our moment of silence, and our land acknowledgement. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, led by Vice Chair Campbell, followed by a moment of silence dedicated to our men and women serving overseas in the military, and then the land acknowledgement read by Vice Chair Campbell. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chair. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional homelands of the Coast Salish tribes. Coast Salish people have lived on and stewarded these lands since time immemorial and continue to do so today. We recognize that this land acknowledgement is one small step towards true allyship, and we commit to uplifting the voices, experiences, and histories of the indigenous people of this land. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We are now at section 4, approval of our agenda. Are there any objections to approving today's agenda as presented? Seeing no objection, the agenda is approved. We want to make sure that everyone understands how to engage in our meeting. So on today's council agenda, there will be multiple opportunities for public comment. On the consent agenda, you may provide comment on any final action item. This does not include items placed on the consent agenda simply for introduction or scheduling. On today's consent agenda, there are 2 sets of minutes for approval, 2 appointment resolutions for final hearing, and 4 grants for approval. Under section 9 of the agenda, we will take up public comment on each ordinance individually. And then finally, under community forum, there will be an opportunity to address the council on any topic that is not up for final action on today's agenda. For information on the rules for public participation, please review the bottom of page 1 on today's agenda. So that brings us to the consent agenda. Does any member wish to pull any item from the consent agenda? Councilmember Krueger.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would like to pull 2D 1 through 4 and move them to, I believe, section 7. Or
2D as in David, 1 through 4, the action on grant applications and awards?
correct.
And move to other business or resolutions. Councilmember Krueger, if you would be willing to move it to other business,
Yes,
it'll give
other
time.
business would fit as well, so. I was
Section
trying to discern that.
11, yes. Any other items to move off? Vice Chair Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. We have a couple appointments with us here today, so I would move that we move items C to B to section 8. Yes, section 8 resolutions. And then I would move that we approve the consent agenda as amended.
So the motion that I'm hearing, let me make sure that this is appropriate. I'm hearing to adopt the consent agenda with the exception of moving the action on grants and application awards to other business, and item C2B under resolutions.
Yes.
And approving the rest of the consent agenda as presented. That's the motion in front of us, correct?
I have a point of clarification, and it's just, we wanted to move all 4 grants, not just one of them. Is that correct?
Councilmember Krueger?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I believe they're worthy of discussion.
The request is for all 4 grants.
Okay. All 4 grants being deferred. Item D.
Okay, so we have a motion in front of us to approve the consent agenda with the exception of the grant approvals and the resolution appointing members to the Tourism Promotion Area Hotel Commission. Everything else is still on the consent agenda, up for final action. This is a public hearing on the rest of the items on the consent agenda. We'll start here in council chambers for a public hearing. Any member of the public wish to provide comment on the remaining items on the consent agenda? Anyone here in council chambers? Not seeing any. Mr. Dominique, anybody in our Zoom room?
For any member of the public that would like to provide comment on any of the remaining items on today's consent agenda, please press the raise hand icon in Zoom or *9 on your telephone keypad. And I see no hands at this time, Chair.
With no hands, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on the consent agenda?
Councilmember Krueger?
Aye.
Councilmember Denson?
Aye.
Councilmember Herrera?
Aye.
Councilmember Hitchin?
Aye.
Councilmember Morell?
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell?
Aye.
Councilmember Mello?
Aye.
The result of the roll call vote is 7 ayes and 0 nays.
On a vote of 7 ayes and 0 nays, the consent agenda is adopted. Under Section 6, messages from the executive and other county elected officials, there are none this evening. Section 7, proclamations, recognitions, awards, and presentations, there are none there as well. We are at Section 8, resolutions. We removed Resolution 2024-194 from the consent agenda, so we may consider it at this time. Councilmember Krueger for a motion, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move Resolution 2024-194.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 2024-194. Madam Clerk, please read the title.
Proposal number R 2024-194, a resolution of the Pierce County Council confirming the appointment of 2 new members to the Pierce County Tourism Promotion Area Hotel Commission.
Thank you. And do we have Carmelo Lopez or Jay Vincent here in council chambers? I see both of them in the Zoom room. Thank you to both of you for making yourself available. Carmelo, could we start with you? We would invite you to please introduce yourself briefly and share why you wish to serve. Carmelo, please go ahead. We see that you are muted. If you could unmute yourself.
Let's see.
There you go. We can hear you now.
Okay. My name is Carmelo Lopez. I'm with the Holiday Inn Express and Suites here in Sumner, Washington. I'm the GM, and I've been at this location for about 6 years. We're right off 24th Street in Sumner. This is a great opportunity for us and for me to serve our community and our local government. So I look forward to serving and doing what we can.
Thank you for being here and your willingness to serve. Jay, we would invite you to introduce yourself and share why you wish to serve.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Mello and council members. My name is Jay Vincent. I'm the park director here at Mount Rainier National Park with Rainier Guest Services. That includes Paradise Inn. I really appreciate and value the opportunity here to promote Pierce County tourism, and I thank you all for your time today.
Thank you for being here. Do any council members have any questions for any of these appointees before we open up for a public hearing? I don't see any. So this is a public hearing on the appointment of these 2 individuals to the Pierce County Tourism Promotion Area Hotel Commission. Any members of the public wish to provide comment on this appointment resolution? We'll start here in chambers. Please come to the podium. Not seeing anyone. Mr. Dominique, anybody in the Zoom room?
For any member of the public that would like to provide comment on proposal number R 2024-194, please press the raise hand icon in Zoom or *9 on your telephone keypad. And there are no hands at this time, Chair.
With no hands, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. Are there final remarks by any council members? Councilmember Cruver.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say thank you both for stepping up to have this appointment. I'm especially looking forward to working with both of you. Ashford has some great folks, especially there at the mountain. We really need your expertise. And Carmelo, early childhood and a minor in history, and I'd love to chat with you about that. It's a very interesting background in that, yeah, you got into this business. And I just look forward to it. Thank you for what you're doing. And we have a meeting coming up soon. Lots of things to do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other remarks? Thank you again to take time out of your professional lives to help make our tourism economy that much more successful. So thank you for your team, being a team player and giving of your expertise. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on Resolution 2024-194?
Councilmember Denson.
Aye.
Councilmember Herrera.
Aye.
Councilmember Hitchin.
Aye.
Councilmember Morell.
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Cruver.
Aye.
Councilmember Mello.
Aye.
The result of the roll call vote is 7 ayes and 0 nays.
On a vote of 7 ayes and 0 nays, the resolution is adopted. We're at Section 9, Ordinances. We have 3 ordinances for consideration this afternoon. We have Ordinance 2024-537S before us. Councilmember Denson for a motion, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I move proposal number O 2024-537S.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adopt Ordinance 2024-537S. Madam Clerk, please read the title.
Proposal number O 2024-537S, an ordinance of the Pierce County Council granting a non-exclusive franchise to the Lake of the Woods Community Club for location of water lines on certain county-owned rights-of-way and authorizing the county executive to execute said franchise.
Thank you. I think the microphone's on this side of the table. Mr. Swanson, to brief the council.
Thank you, Chair Mello, members of the council. Before you this afternoon is ordinance number O 2024-537S, which begins on page 48 of your electronic packet. The proposal would authorize the executive to execute a franchise agreement with the Lake of the Woods Community Club that would allow for the construction, operation, and maintenance of a water pipeline system in the county's right-of-way. Under Pierce County Code 12.32.040, this franchise would be for an initial 10-year period with an optional renewal of up to 5 years. Lake of the Woods Community Club operates a water system in District 7 on the Key Peninsula, providing services to approximately 870 Pierce County residents on 324 connections. Maps of the service area and the area we're discussing are on pages 64 and 65 in the packet. Lake of the Woods is a utility in good standing with Planning and Public Works. As a Group A water system, this application has been reviewed by Planning and Public Works staff under the Coordinated Water System Plan and has been found to be consistent with that countywide plan. The county engineer has also reviewed this application and does recommend granting of the franchise. An equity analysis has been completed and is included in your packet documents. A $2,500 application fee has been paid by the applicant, and the receipts for that are also documented in your packet. A public hearing was held on August 13th in the Economic and Infrastructure Development Committee, where this proposal did receive a due pass recommendation. That was actually due pass as amended. I'm going to receive that recommendation. And we do have a second public hearing on this proposal scheduled at council here today. And with that, both council and Planning and Public Works staff are available to answer any questions members may have. We have Mr. Nick Oniski on the Zoom call available for members.
Thank you. Mr. Oniski, do you have anything to add on behalf of the department?
Not at this time.
Thank you for being available. Do any council members have any questions for council or department staff? I don't see any. This is a public hearing on this non-exclusive franchise agreement to Lake of the Woods Community Club. Any member of the public here in council chambers wish to provide comment? Anyone here in council chambers? Not seeing anybody come to the podium. Mr. Dominique, anybody in the Zoom room?
For any member of the public that would like to provide comment on proposal number O 2024-537S, please press the raise hand icon in Zoom or star 9 on your telephone keypad. There are no hands at this time, Chair.
With no hands, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. Are there final remarks by council members? Councilmember Denson.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to thank the Department of Planning and Public Works for their thoughtful work on this. It was a great collaborative effort, and we look forward to this franchise commencing. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on ordinance 2024-537S?
Councilmember Herrera.
Aye.
Councilmember Hitchin.
Aye.
Councilmember Morrell.
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Krueger.
Aye.
Councilmember Denson.
Aye.
Councilmember Mello.
Aye.
The result of the roll call vote is 7 ayes and 0 nays.
On a vote of 7 ayes and 0 nays, the ordinance is adopted. Read ordinance 2024-539S. Councilmember Hitchin for a motion, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move O 2024-539S.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adopt ordinance 2024-539S. Madam Clerk, please read the title into the record.
Proposal number O 2024-539S, an ordinance of the Pierce County Council amending Pierce County Code Title II Administration, Chapter 13.4 Sewer Administrative Regulations.
Last line, please.
Fact and setting an effective date.
Thank you. Ms. Rhett Hunt to introduce this item.
Hello, Erica Rhett Hunt, council staff.
I'm sorry, Ms. Rhett Hunt, the microphone's at the other end of the table there.
Thank you very much. Erica Rhett Hunt, council staff. So ordinance 2024-539S would amend various titles and chapters of the Pierce County Code consistent with the Planning Public Works Workflow Improvement Project. So the Planning and Public Works established the Workflow Improvement Project to identify opportunities to implement strategies to improve county permit processing. So that was, and I believe the Director of Planning and Public Works has previously briefed the council on that project. So the proposal would amend various chapters of the Pierce County Code, including in Exhibit A, it amends Title II for proposed amendments to Planning and Public Works fees, and also regarding timing of Land Use Advisory Commission recommendations. Exhibit B amends Chapter 1304 for sewer administrative regulations. These are primarily amendments that would align permit application expiration and extension timelines with other county permits for internal consistency, and there's a variety of technical amendments. Exhibit C amends Chapter 17A10 on construction infrastructure regulations specifically related to site development and stormwater drainage. This would establish an exemption from a requirement to obtain a site development permit for unpermitted buildings that were constructed prior to November 3rd, 1997. It also aligns permit application, expiration, and extension timelines with other county permit types for internal consistency. In Exhibit D, it amends Title 17C for construction and infrastructure regulations specific to building and fire codes. These would delay the effective date of building code amendments. They would provide an internal appeal process. They would align the form and content of building permit applications with other county application types. They would also align building, mechanical, and plumbing permit expiration and permit application expiration timelines with other county permit types for internal consistency. In Exhibit E, it amends Title 18, the development regulations, and this is where the amendments essentially establish 3 tiers of permit processing processing types, with specific timelines and notification standards for final decisions. This is consistent. These types of changes are consistent with House Bill 5290, which required the county to have a certain amount of timeline for certain application types. It updates the requirements for what constitutes a complete application. It updates application expiration deadlines, notification requirements, and provides additional time to extend expired permits or approvals. Exhibit F amends Title 18F development regulations for land divisions and boundary changes, and it provides up to 7 years from the date of a preliminary plat approval to submit a final plat through time extension requests, and it makes several technical changes to the subdivision code. So a few substantive changes and a lot of technical changes there. The recommendation, there were 8 amendments that are included into the packet before you today. They were adopted by Community Development and Environment Committee, and they've been incorporated into the substitute proposal. I'm available for any questions. We also have Robert Perez here from the department who can answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Redhunt. Mr. Perez, anything to add on behalf of the Planning and Public Works Department?
No, I believe Eric summarized that very well.
Thank you for being available. Are there questions or comments by council members before we open up for a public hearing? Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Redhunt, I asked you this question earlier. I wanted to understand about when they pay their permit for this work. Is it before it starts or after it's completed?
Yeah, I'll defer that question to Mr. Perez.
Okay.
And I just want to make sure that I'm clear. The question is, when is the payment received by Planning and Public Works?
Yes.
So that payment is required in order to, as part of a complete application. So once everything has been submitted, one of the final steps is to make sure that the fees are paid.
Okay, thank you. I just, with the way we run the rates changes, I was just curious how that worked. So, and my second question, probably also for you, Mr. Perez, is just making sure in some places it says just says days. You have like 14 days to complete something or 90 days to complete something. And then it also says in some areas calendar days and other days it's business days. So is it consistent if it doesn't have a specific calendar days or business days? Is there like a rule in Planning and Public Works which type of day you're counting?
Yes, and it's clearly laid out in Title 18 how we calculate the days.
Okay, so it makes sense to people that do this more often. And then my last question, and I missed this when we were doing the original look over, was in Exhibit E, where it changes the dates. It crosses out some dates from 1996 and then replaces it with 2005 as far as outstanding projects becoming void. And I'm just curious, do we actually have any outstanding projects that are still active prior to 2005?
Off the top of my head, I wouldn't be able to answer that accurately. But I would speculate that there is possibly a handful out there.
Okay. Do you know if the department did anything to reach out to them to let them know we were changing these rules?
For the platting portion?
Yes.
No, I don't believe so, because those would already be vested to what was already there. If they haven't if they haven't applied for their extensions that they already have, then they would just naturally expire.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for those questions. Councilmember Morell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'll direct this to Mr. Perez also. On Chapter 2.45 with the Land Use Advisory Commissions, just in looking at the changes within both the function and the recommendation, this doesn't prevent the LUAC from making any recommendations on any land within their geographic boundaries. It doesn't lessen their ability to do what we intended them to do as a commission.
No, this was specifically to address an issue of when, in order to meet our statutory requirements by state law, when we have overlapping issues, either with no quorum or just too many projects coming in at once for them to adequately review them in a timely manner, we still give them the opportunity to do so in other business. We still send everything out to them, but we may not be able to have staff out there at those specific for some specific issues when there is just too much to do at once.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. I understand. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? I don't see any. This is a public hearing on ordinance 2024-539S. Does any member of the public, starting here in council chambers, wish to provide comment on this ordinance? Seeing no one in council chambers, Mr. Dominique, anybody in the Zoom room?
For any member of the public that would like to provide comment on proposal number 2024-539S, please press the raise hand icon in Zoom or *9 on your telephone keypad. And we have 2 hands at this time. I have initials HP. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Terry Hurd. I don't know why the HP comes up. Am I speaking?
Yes, we can hear you well, Mr. Hurd.
Thank you. I was the president of the Frederickson Clover Creek Community Council, and every time I've seen you people come up with something that says that you're going to listen to the councils and what they're trying to provide, I can't tell you the pain I feel. We fought consistently with Pierce County when it came to our community plan and the other things that we wanted and felt were necessary for our community. Through the years, I watched everything stripped away by permitted outright, a fine term that the county used, that they took away from the LUAC the ability to address the issues. It never came before the issues. And when we tried to address the things that we could address, it was nothing but a fight. We're not ignorant people out there. We learned the rules and we tried to enforce them and have spoke to enforce the rules of the Growth Management Act. So when it comes to these issues that you're going to listen to the LUACs on speaking of how they want their community to develop, are you really truthfully going to do that? It's sad when I sit and read about these things and deal with you people. I don't feel you're an enemy, but so many times you get elected and a new group of people comes in and a new group of people listens to those who have supported and elected them and don't listen to the people who have no other interest than wanting their community to develop in a reasonable manner, whether it's environmental or it's personal. So please, when you look at this, consider the fact that we citizens out there are trying to add what we consider is necessary. And what our fight is, if all else fails, you put in the planned development district, which circumvents all the things that we've tried to do. Please, listen to the LUAC members that come in there that are not directly involved with being supported by development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd.
And next we have phone number ending in 075. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Roxy Giddings. I agree with Terry Hurd completely, and I was curious to know if there were any other people that had made remarks at the August 5th meeting where they had the open house. Wait a minute, that's not right. It was July the 15th. Way back in July they talked about. I don't remember if I was listening or made a remark or not, but I know that I didn't make any remark about the land divisions and boundary changes. I have not looked at this on the computer. I haven't had access. But anyway, I am curious to know if there are other people who've made remarks and what kind of remarks they made, because whenever it comes time to have a LUAC meeting and there either is not staff or not enough people of the public at the LUAC meeting that represent us there officially, things just get disappeared and they appear automatically whether or not we've had any say or not. I used to be on the LUAC years ago. In fact, I worked on both of the land use plans for the Parkland-Spanaway area way back in the late 70s and then again in the late 90s. It takes 3 years to do one of these plans when it comes to the public making the plans for their area, and we do resent having the staff just say, oh, this is the change we're making. And when they make changes to our LUAC, they are messing with the Growth Management Act because they are required to listen to us according to the Growth Management Act, and we are first and foremost. And it's we're an official organization, and I think the county should pay a lot more attention to what we have to say. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for your comments.
And there are no more hands at this time, Chair.
Thank you. With no further comments, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. Are there final remarks by council members? I don't see any further questions or comments by council members. I want to thank the department staff who worked for a really long time on this proposal, trying to identify where there were opportunities for cleanup to our code, for clarity, for better ease of use, for appropriate streamlining, which is not synonymous with cutting corners and degrading our environment. So there was room for improvement with our code to bring more certainty and clarity and ability to implement our building code so that we can build the appropriate housing and commercial space in appropriate places, in appropriate conditions, without degrading the quality of our environment. So thank you for the very hard work. This took well over a year with a lot of thoughtful work, and we'll be very much following to see what kind of process improvements, timeline improvements for implementation are realized here in our Planning and Public Works Division. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on ordinance 2024-539S?
Councilmember Hitchin.
Aye.
Councilmember Morrell.
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Krueger.
Aye.
Councilmember Denson.
Aye.
Councilmember Herrera.
Aye.
Councilmember Mello.
Aye.
The results of the roll call vote is 7 ayes and 0 nays.
On a vote of 7 ayes and 0 nays, the ordinance is adopted. Especially for the benefit of both the public and the staff that is available for the items on the council's agenda this afternoon, we're going to soon take up ordinance 2024-540S, and then again for the benefit of the staff, especially, we're going to go to other business right after that to take up the consideration of the grant awards. Then we're going to come back to community forum. And we need to respect the staff who's making themselves available for further council questions. So that's going to be the order. We'll move to the final ordinance, then move to other business to take up consideration of grant awards, then come back to community forum. So with that, Councilmember Denson, for a motion on ordinance 2024-540, yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I move proposal number O 2024-540S.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adopt ordinance 2024-540S. Madam Clerk, please read the title.
Proposal number O 2024-540S, an ordinance of the Pierce County Council adopting interim amendments to Pierce County Code Chapter 17C.30, International Residential Code, Chapter 18.25, Definitions, and Chapter 18A.38, Temporary Development, to fulfill an immediate need for emergency shelter for unsheltered residents of Pierce County, declaring an imminent threat to public health or safety exists, and adopting findings of fact.
Thank you. Ms. Britt Hunt to brief the council.
Thank you, Chair. Ordinance 2024-540S on an interim basis amends 4 sections of the Pierce County Code with the purpose of removing regulatory barriers to temporary housing communities in unincorporated Pierce County. So the 4 sections amended both exempt small sleeping accommodations from a building permit, and they establish a new process for authorizing temporary housing communities, including provisions to ensure adequate health, clean water, sewage disposal, solid waste disposal, emergency access, security, and public notice. As an interim ordinance, it would be in effect for 6 months. While the department prepares permanent regulations, an interim ordinance could potentially be extended at the end of the 6 months. The interim regulations are based on Pierce County's adopted safe parking regulations in Chapter 18A39, and it specifically includes regulations similar to safe parking in order to authorize a temporary housing community, which includes the authorization through an MOU with the Human Services Director, guidelines on the rights and abilities of site inhabitants consistent with state law, guidelines about the responsibilities of the host organization, which are also consistent with state law, public notice requirements that require the notification of surrounding properties and a public meeting prior to authorization, as well as requirements for a criminal background check for active warrants for violent or sexual crimes. The proposed interim regulations are based on best practices that we've heard from other jurisdictions' codes, as well as that we've seen in other jurisdictions' codes, as well as conversations with service providers and Planning Public Works Department and the Health Department. So the effect of the amendments would be it would amend Section 17C30.040 of the Pierce County Code to exempt structures under 120 square feet from a building permit if they're used as individual sleeping accommodations as part of a temporary housing community. It would also amend Section 1825.030 to update the definition of a temporary housing community and to define one of the terms within that definition, which is tiny house encampment, for consistency with the changes that are proposed in Section 18A38.040. It would also amend Section 18A30.030 to exempt temporary housing communities from most of the duration and frequency standards applied to other temporary uses, and that's because more specific standards are included in 18A30.040. It would amend Section 18A30.040, which addresses temporary housing communities, to apply that Memorandum of Understanding process that I I spoke to that authorizes safe parking sites. And this would entail the following process. Temporary housing communities could be authorized through an MOU for 180 days, not including their setup time. The Human Services Director would have the authorization to extend that initial MOU for up to another 180 days if there's still a need for the temporary housing community and it followed all the conditions of its authorization. If after that initial authorization and extension there was a continued need for the temporary housing community, a new MOU could be authorized based on a review of operations of the facility by the Human Service Director, and that would also include a new community planning, a new community meeting, a new site plan review, and a new MOU. All the authorizations and extensions are discretionary decisions and dependent upon the temporary housing community meeting the standards and requirements in the code. And the standards that are included in those in the code include general standards, which would limit the size of the facility to a maximum of 60 inhabitants. It would require a 1-mile spacing between temporary housing communities unless a determination is made that there'll be no impact on the adjacent community in having them closer. There would be no new permanent structures allowed associated with the use. An operation structure would be required for a site manager, and a site manager must be present 24 hours a day. The minimum age for inhabitants would be 18 unless they were accompanied by a guardian. There would be a requirement to screen for active warrants for violent and sex offenses. There would be a code of conduct that would prohibit drug and alcohol use on the site. And case management and supportive services must also be provided to the inhabitants of the facility. There are site standards that are under the authority of the Planning and Public Works Department, which includes enclosure with a site obscuring fence, ensuring that the facility is located outside of shorelines, critical areas, or the buffers of those areas, a requirement that there are 2 parking spots assigned per 25 residents, and approved plans for fire safety, emergency access, and evacuation, which would also include appropriate spacing between temporary sleeping facilities to ensure emergency access, fire safety, and evacuation. Health and safety standards written into the proposed code include a requirement for an adequate source of water, wastewater disposal, solid waste disposal, and pest control. Minimum standards for hygiene facilities, including toilets, hand washing stations, and showers. Areas for food preparation, storage, and serving would be approved by the health department, and an authorization that monthly inspections could happen to ensure that the health and safety standards are met. This was reviewed by the Community Development and Environment Committee at their August 5th meeting. They did include an amendment that was integrated into the substantive ordinance, so that's in your packet today. And there are 2 additional amendments that have been proposed for the council to consider this afternoon.
Thank you, Ms. Brett Hunt. Thank you for briefing on that. There's a lot to the bill. There's a lot embedded in here that we've learned from many other communities who already do this. Communities like Auburn, Tacoma, Sumner, Pacific, Bellingham, Bremerton, Shoreline, Yakima, King, Thurston, Kitsap, Whatcom, and Jefferson counties, just to name a few. So you learn from a lot of other communities, learn from providers who do this professionally in many communities. So there's a lot to this. And it's, I think, a well thought through path forward about how to move folks unsheltered to well managed, safe sheltering while we wait for more permanent housing to be built, which we know takes many years to do. So thank you for briefing on the content of the bill. There's a lot to it, as you outlined. Are there questions before we get to the two amendments that are before us? Let's begin with Councilmember Cruver.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the explanation. I'm wondering in Exhibit C, page 1, line 15.
Okay.
It says a parcel may host no more than 3 temporary uses. How is a parcel, because I know in Spanaway it's 2 parcels together. So how would that be treated? As one large parcel or 2 together? And two different, 30 on, or 60 on one and 60 on the other?
Well, the 60 on one, 60 on the other should be prevented by the requirement for 1 mile separation between uses.
But that can be waived.
Yes, it could be waived.
Okay. And then I'm wondering on page 3, line 13 of Exhibit C. Let's see. That says the number of code compliance cases. Is there, because it says shall consider factors. So if there are lots of code compliance complaints, does that trigger anything? Is there a magic number? If it's like 1 to 5, nobody cares. If it's 30, somebody cares, and then what happens?
So that an exact standard for that isn't specified. It would be at the discretion of the Human Services Director.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Vice Chair Campbell.
Thank you. Going through some of the feedback I've received, this one that we're bringing forward here, the 540S, did this come through an emergency process?
It's an interim ordinance.
It's an interim, but we didn't bring this forward as an emergency resolution.
No, there was an emergency
ordinance.
Ordinance that did not pass, and this is similar but different from that, and it's regular process.
And so it'd be safe to say that this housing ordinance has gone through a full normal legislative process, encouraging plenty of public input?
It's gone through the normal process for an interim ordinance, which is authorized by the Growth Management Act.
Okay. And is there a fiscal note, a fiscal implication on this?
It's a de minimis fiscal impact.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Morrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Hunt, on you had mentioned, I think it's in one of the sections pertaining to critical areas?
Yes.
Okay. Does this process, anywhere in it, do they have to go through a SEPA process to be permitted on a site?
So that would be determined during the site plan review. That would be determined by the Department of Planning and Public Works.
Okay. And they do have to submit a site plan?
Yes.
Okay. And that has to go through Planning and Public Works?
Correct. They have the authority to redo the site plan, to authorize the site plan.
Okay. And thus to review it, they would have to get a permit to site it at a certain location?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions before we get to amendments? Don't see any. Let's move to Council Amendment number 1. Vice Chair Campbell for a motion, please.
Thank you, Chair. I move Council Amendment number 1 to O2024-540S.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adopt Council Amendment number 1. Ms. Brett Hunt.
Thank you very much. Council Amendment 1 would raise the standard of required toilet and hand washing facilities from a standard of 1 per 20 inhabitants to a standard of 1 per 15 inhabitants.
Thank you. Ms. Brett Hunt, my understanding is on Council's behalf, you met with the Health Department, the Planning and Public Works Department, Human Services Department, and at least one professional provider who does this, has history with doing a temporary housing community like the one we're talking about, and got agreement that this is a standard that can be reached.
Agreed. Yes.
we're not setting a standard that's impossible or inappropriate to meet in your professional estimation?
That is correct.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on Amendment 1? This moves the hygiene facility standard from 1 to 20 to 1 to 15. We'll take a voice vote. All those in favor of adopting Council Amendment number 1, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion's adopted. We have Council Amendment number 2 before us. Vice Chair Campbell for a motion, please.
Thank you, Chair. I move Council Amendment number 2 to Proposal O 2024-540S.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adopt Council Amendment number 2. Ms. Brett Hunt.
Thank you. Amendment number 2 would add a recital to the ordinance at line 12 that reads, whereas homelessness continues to increase. According to the Pierce County Sheriff Department, from January 2024 to July 2024, eviction cases increased 627% in Pierce County. In the first week of August, the city of Tacoma reported 138 new, previously unidentified, people experiencing homelessness in 1 week, while showing only 16 shelter beds available.
Thank you. Vice Chair Campbell to speak to your amendment.
Thank you. I think it pretty much speaks for itself. In some work we were doing parallel to this, reached out. It had been brought to my attention the large number of recent homeless on the streets in 1 week, in trying to figure out why I reached out to the Sheriff's Department, got data from them on evictions, and just wanted to make sure the most current data was included. That being said, I did receive information this morning that Pierce County-wide shelter beds are only at 9, but I hadn't been able to verify that information yet, so I did not include that update and went with the verified information I had of 16 2 weeks ago. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on Amendment number 2? Councilmember Morrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will not be supporting this amendment. I understand the second half of this. I don't agree with the accuracy of this. Just because law enforcement gets an eviction court order doesn't mean the defendant is homeless. You have to follow each case and talk to the plaintiff and attorney to find out if that information is correct, that all 627% of them end up homeless. I'm not going to argue the 138 or 137, but I think there again, this ordinance has probably the most whereases I have ever seen in an ordinance with 33. Adding one more, I don't think really adds to this ordinance. The 2 before had 9 and 8 whereases, so my concern is that we're sending a wrong message with some of the information in this whereas. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cruver.
Thank you, Chair. I too will echo the same sentiments. And also looking at the note that at Tacoma, there was a winter ban through April 1 and a school year ban through June 22. And so that may skew the numbers as well. And I don't know that it's really going to be adding details that can be challenged because we don't really know for sure. I think it's not necessary. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Councilmember Herrera.
Thank you, Chair. And I also echo my colleagues who just spoke on the whereases and the data that we may be looking at. You know, we had in July in Tacoma, we had FOB Hope closed. Tacoma closed that one down, and the temporary emergency shelter number 4 was also closed. That may have contributed to some of the 138 who are all of a sudden homeless out there. So I won't be supporting this either. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Denson.
Yes, thank you. I will be supporting this, adding an additional whereas that gives some context and reasoning for why we are bringing this proposal forward now, I don't think hurts, and it really shows historically where we are. In the future, people can look back and see the situation we are in. It's true that FOB Hope closed recently, as well as the other facility that Councilmember Herrera mentioned. We don't have replacements for those facilities. So the fact is, I mean, if folks, some of these numbers are those folks are on the street, and we don't have a replacement for places that they can go right now. I wish we did. So that is the situation. According to the city of Tacoma, which we have no reason to doubt, and we certainly don't have any reason to doubt the records of our own Pierce County Sheriff Department in regards to the evictions that they've had to be part of, and I know that hurts their heart as well. So I will be supporting this. I think it's helpful in context now and in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Vice Chair Campbell.
It's math. So first of all, the 138 were unidentified. If they'd come out of FOB Hope or the other center, they'd already been in the system. What the city manager's report reported for that week is that there were approximately, I'm going off memory here, about 250 people they had contacted. Most of them, about half or a little less, they already had the names of. So those would have been the FOB Hope. Those would have been the four. These were new. These were people who hadn't been in the system before. And so we can't say that the closure of those are the 138 because simply they're not, because we have by name lists. And Councilmember Krueger brings up that, yes, the city of Tacoma has a new eviction policy. That's what got me looking into the numbers of what are going to be the impact of that policy of not having winter evictions. And what it's done is it's deferred and crunched them into a tighter form in the summer. That is exactly the point that was being made here, is that we are having it go up significantly. And this is a burden on our sheriff's department when they're having to work on nearly 400 eviction cases in a month. 378, I think was the number, or 76. I don't have it right here in front of me. Up from 55 in January. Okay, let's take the percentages out. Yes, 627% is a big percentage. 400 people were served with eviction. Or, I'm sorry, households. And at the same time that that's happening, we see 138 new people on our streets. If we're not saying there's not a connection there, yes, we could track through every piece of data. But as long as we're tracking people and trying to figure out how many led to homelessness, because what's not tracked in there is the hundreds of people whose rent was up and they just moved out. Chances are they didn't have a place to move to if they were evicted. Doesn't mean they ended up on the street. Maybe they did rent a place. It's hard to get an eviction to rent a place if you have an eviction on your record, but maybe they got moved in there. But these are just facts put forward by our sheriff's department. We want to debate whether or not they're true. What does that say about our faith in our sheriff's department? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Campbell. Councilmember Krueger.
Thank you, Chair. That's interesting. I'm looking at information or being told that chances are most of those evictions are from non-payment of rent. And you have to ask, so does the owner of the rental unit lose that in his own home because he can't make mortgage on two homes because someone isn't paying? This is nothing new in life in having the evictions. And chances are many of them had other places to go to. So this is a lot of speculation and a lot of drama here that I just don't think is necessary. But that's my position. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Vice Chair Campbell.
One more quick point. Yes, Councilmember Morrell, there are already 34. None of them had I written. I just wanted to get something in this bill. So it's just getting a whereas in there. Let me get something in there.
Every member is able to make amendments at any time, and we've invited amendments from everyone on this dais to meet people's concerns. Haven't got amendments from some folks who have expressed concerns, and I'm, but maybe they're still to come. I'll be supporting this amendment. What I hear Vice Chair Campbell doing is, at a point in time, there was information that came to our attention. I do not hear Vice Chair Campbell saying that there is extreme direct correlation for each and every case, but it is the trend. It is a trend of evictions and a trend of homelessness and a trend of real homelessness experience on the streets of Tacoma in this case, and the lack of shelter bed availability. So I don't know that it's useful to debate the extreme accurate. These numbers are accurate as they came to us from these reliable sources, the Sheriff's Department and the city manager in the city of Tacoma. The trend, I think, is what is being pointed out here, that there is strong correlation, maybe not cause and effect for each and every case, but extremely strong correlation amongst all the other things we've been learning that correlate to the significant rise in homelessness year over year. The last thing I just wanted to note, because I know folks are listening and I think folks value accuracy. Yes, the Tacoma Micro Shelter site at 69th and Proctor did close, but I want to be really clear for accuracy. The micro shelter that was at 69th and Proctor, a new one got set up at 35th and Pacific. So there was actually not a net loss in shelter bed capacity in the city of Tacoma, because when the city of Tacoma closed 69th and Proctor, it was always meant to be temporary, they opened 35th and Pacific. And that's to the point of this bill that's in front of us. These are temporary housing communities. None of these are meant to be permanent. Like the Good Neighbor Village in Spanaway, that's a permanent site. What we're talking about are temporary housing communities. They're meant to be there for a year or two or three while we look, and then the staff will determine if there's the need for continuance maybe at another site. Again, as demonstrated in Tacoma, that one Thames site that did close at 69th and Proctor, it did close because it was always meant to be temporary. And then a new one opened at 35th and Pacific. So that no one neighborhood is meant to have these temporary communities. They're not built to be permanent. They're meant to be temporary very intentionally. So I just wanted to make sure we're dealing with accuracy, that there was no net loss in temporary non-congregate shelter beds in the city of Tacoma. We're going to take a voice vote on the adoption of Council Amendment number 2. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
Can we have roll call, please?
Roll call has been requested. We will take one. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on Council Amendment number 2?
Councilmember Morell?
Nay.
Councilmember Campbell?
Aye.
Councilmember Kruger?
Nay.
Councilmember Denson?
Aye.
Councilmember Herrera?
Nay.
Councilmember Hitchin?
Aye.
Councilmember Mello?
Aye.
The result of the roll call vote is 4 ayes and 3 nays.
On a vote of 4 ayes and 3 nays, the amendment is adopted. We now have the ordinance before us as amended. Are there any further amendments to come forward by council? I've heard concerns. I've not seen amendments to address those concerns. Does any other member have any other amendments to come forward to address any concerns brought forward by the executive, if they're legitimate concerns, or concerns by council members? Are there any other amendments to come forward? I don't see any.
Will you accept all amendments?
We will. Vice Chair Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to add a 36th whereas amendment. Is that right, Mr. Morell? Are we at 36 now? 36 whereas amendments, whereas the Pierce County Council desires to address homelessness in Pierce County. Do I have a second?
It's been properly moved and seconded to add another whereas statement, which reads, whereas the Pierce County Council wishes to address the crisis of homelessness in Pierce County.
Yes.
Are there any comments? Not seeing any, we'll take a voice vote. All those in favor of the oral amendment, the additional whereas statement, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay.
Roll call, please.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Point of order. Point of order. Can a roll call be counted after the vote or before the vote?
Thank you, Councilmember Morell. It being unclear the determination of the vote, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on the amendment.
Could we please reread the amendment into the record?
Madam Clerk, do you have it?
Yep.
Go for it.
The oral amendment is adding an additional whereas. Whereas the Pierce County Council desires to address the crisis of homelessness in Pierce County. Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Cruver.
Nay.
Councilmember Denson. Aye. Councilmember Herrera.
Aye.
Councilmember Hitchin.
Aye.
Councilmember Morell.
Nay.
Councilmember Mello.
Aye.
The results of the roll call vote is 5 ayes and 2 nays.
On a vote of 5 ayes and 2 nays, the amendment is adopted. I'll ask one more time, are there any further amendments to come forward as we deliberate this incredibly serious matter in front of us? I don't see any. We will open up for a public hearing. We are grateful for members of the public who have waited a little over an hour for us to be able to hear from you. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. We'll start with those that signed in, and then there will be we'll see if there's anyone else in chambers who did not get a chance to sign in but still wishes to testify. Then we're going to move to the Zoom room. So everyone will have an opportunity, if you so choose. You have 3 minutes to make your remarks. We ask you to state your name, please, and then begin your remarks. And there'll be a timer on the TV to your right if you're here in chambers, and if you're in the Zoom room, you'll be able to see it on your Zoom screen. So again, we're going to start here in chambers. Tammy, and if I can't read your handwriting, please forgive me. Then Joquan, then Brian Johnson. Good evening.
Good afternoon. I'm Tammy Creeley. I'm the Executive Director for Forward Operating Base Hope. I want to talk a bit today about the stigma that surrounds emergency and temporary shelters. People have this idea that putting a shelter in their neighborhood will cause more problems or nuances. Speaking from experience, having managed the Veterans Village for the last 2 years on 82nd and Pacific, which, by the way, before we moved in the neighborhood, was full of prostitutes, drug dealers, and the whole area was riddled with trash. After opening the village, our veterans started taking pride in their community. They were responsible for keeping the village clean and neat, and staff and security worked right beside them in doing so. Every Thursday we have village meetings, and one of our villagers, or veterans, came up with a great idea. He said, let's show the neighbors we're good people and clean up the neighborhood. So every Saturday, a group of our veterans cleaned a 2-block radius around the village and kept it clean. Store owners and neighbors would come by the village and thank us. Our security and the villagers started running off prostitutes and drug dealers simply by saying, you need to take your business elsewhere. When the village was shutting down, the neighbors were calling to ask if we were leaving. When I said yes, their response was always the same. And I quote, shit, there goes the neighborhood. We finally felt safe, and now you're leaving, end quote. Putting the right providers in place is also crucial to the success of an emergency shelter. For example, FOB Hope works specifically with homeless veterans, and as you already know, our success with getting them transitioned to be ready for permanent housing exceeded all expectations. Keeping the site small gives staff the opportunity to work with each person every day on their needs and goals. Pierce County has an opportunity to expand on the same model Fob Hope used for its success. Breaking the sites down into specific populations and then putting the providers who specialize in these populations is crucial. You can't sit behind a desk all day and think the homeless are going to come to you. You have to engage with them within the shelter, within the community that you have helped them build. I suggest that you please say yes to the emergency shelter ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you sincerely for your work with our homeless veterans. Joe Kwan, followed by Brian Johnson, followed by Sharon Lee.
Hello, my name is Jaquan Satchel. I am the Program Operations Manager for Fob Hope. I want to talk a bit about access to services. In an emergency shelter, clients have better access to services as more service providers are willing to visit a shelter to assign people to what they need. In doing so, when the provider needs additional information, they'll know where to contact them. Most of them do not have cell phones. Also, obviously, them being homeless and transient, they end up moving. It becomes hard to get in contact with them yet again. Most providers also have vehicles to transport clients to services. Fob Hope, for example, owns a cargo van and a transportation van. We would support our veterans by sending them to appointments, DOL, DSHS, Social Security, and doctor's appointments. We were also able to transport them to any resource events such as Tacoma Stand Down. Pierce County has the opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. Having a successful program puts Pierce County on the forefront of reaching functional zero, which I just recently took the time to understand, and it's quite well. If Fob Hope could have kept their village open, we could have potentially helped you guys reach said expectation. I guess at the very end of it, the main question is do you want your community to continue, excuse me for the lack of better words, bitching that you guys are not doing anything? Or would you guys prefer to hear them talk about what you have been doing? Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Johnson, followed by Sharon Lee, and then John Brown.
Thank you, Councilman Neal. You got my name right. My handwriting apparently was legible this time around.
You printed and signed, so.
Well, yeah. I think, okay. But my name is Brian Johnson, for the record. So many of you will recall, we just recently had a storm out here. And I got to ask, any of you lose power during that storm? You know what that's like, right? Fumbling around for batteries, rechargeable devices, a flashlight just to go to the bathroom. Now, how long did you have to deal with that? 2 hours? 6 hours? Half a day? The whole day? Imagine having to deal with that every day. Worse yet, imagine having to be out in that storm with little more than a tent canvas for shelter, if you're lucky. That's not imagination for many of our citizens right now. That is a reality. Now, we've got two ways to face that because we've got more storms coming. We have the temporary housing communities ordinance as proposed, or option two, and this is something that Councilman Campbell and Mello have mentioned, we can do the same thing over and over again. And as a result, we'll have more tent cities and more tent little communities pop up everywhere and be swept again and again and again because these people have nowhere else to go and they got to go somewhere. Now, I've heard concerns about everything from this could encourage drug use, this can become a drug den, this could attract drug dealers around the area. But that's the managed part of this ordinance, the managed part, right? And Lehigh, I've talked to them, they're willing to work with the police to discourage that kind of activity around these centers. That is a better deal than you are going to get from the tent cities and the little tent communities that we've got under our overpasses, in our undeveloped lands, where their drugs are moving with impunity, and the only management right now is the police, if they can find these sites, and if they've got even the manpower to do anything about it. So, Lehigh and other groups, they've got the funding, They've got a plan. Some of you have been to some of these communities to see what they are like. All they need is the permit and the go-ahead from this council to move forward, and I ask the council to do that. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Sharon Lee, followed by John Brown.
Good afternoon. I'm Sharon Lee, and I'm the Executive Director of Lehigh Low Income Housing Institute. First, I want to thank you for coming and tour the Tiny House Village at 6th and Orchard. It was actually wonderful seeing you there. I know it was a study session, and we were hosted by the First Christian Church, and it's I think you got a chance to see for yourself the tiny houses. You saw inside the tiny house how it's set up with bedding and heat, and there's a smoke detector, carbon monoxide detector, and also you saw the case manager's office. We had 2 case managers that were there on site helping people with housing navigation, getting their documentation, income support, employment. And so you also saw the kitchen area, the community, the hygiene. We have running water. We're no longer just doing porta potties. We're doing like serious, hot water, running water in the kitchen, refrigerators, freezers. I mean, we have really, frankly, laundry. I mean, laundry is so important for people so that they don't spend their time wandering around the neighborhood looking for how they're going to, take a shower, how they're going to get their laundry done. So I want to emphasize the temporary nature of a tiny house village. Our plan really in Spanaway is to develop affordable senior housing. And in the meantime, as you know, it takes a while to accumulate the financing. So we use a tiny house village on a temporary basis, and then we take time to get the permits and take time to apply to the State Housing Trust Fund, the county, low-income housing tax credits. So it takes a while. So we're actually sort of using efficiently the land that's available. And so we really want to develop the housing, which is the ultimate goal. But in the interim time, there's a need for temporary shelters because of the homelessness crisis. And I will say that we need both. We need both temporary shelter because of the increase in people who are vulnerable and are at risk living on the streets. And then we also need permanent supportive housing. So it's not like one or the other. We have to have both. And I think the community has a dearth of both types, right? And I also want to say that we specifically responded to the executive's RFP. So the Human Service Department actually put out an RFP for a, tiny house village micro shelter, and we responded to it. We got funded, so we got funded for both the capital and the operating support, which is why at this point there's no fiscal, impact because the funds are there for us to set it up and operate. And but it would be sort of, ludicrous to have us buy the land, which we did, and we worked with the human service staff, and then to not be able to open it. It's sort. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. Anyway, I just want to emphasize that we intend to run it well with 24/7 staffing, and we appreciate your support.
Thank you so much for being with us. John Brown, followed by Rhonda Williams, and then Sally Perkins.
My name is John Brown, and I'm a program manager for the Low Income Housing Institute. And again, just wanted to stand before you guys and say I think this ordinance is really important to pass to help the individuals in the Spanaway area that are experiencing homelessness. And then also, too, to thank the council for those that came out to the tour. I think it was good to have you guys there. I know a lot of questions were asked, and I hope all your questions got answered. And it was just really good for you guys to see how a well-managed tiny house village runs. And I think that, when we had the first meeting a couple weeks ago, some of the individuals weren't familiar with how a well-managed site can be. And again, we're very big on community, making sure that, the place that we set up a village at is that we can be an asset and not a liability. And again, as Sharon Lee said too, with our, 24-hour staff and just making sure that, we're helping individuals, and then at the same time we can bring a community up and not down. So I would really, appreciate for you guys to really think about really passing this ordinance to help the community out. And thank you.
Thank you. Rhonda Williams, followed by Sally Perkins.
Hello. I'm going to point out that my name is Dr. Rhonda Williams. I'm also going to point out that I was one of the residents at the tiny house village on 6th and Orchard. I came there after a really bad divorce. I ended up going through that residential facility. I've lived in transitional homes. I've lived from couch to couch. I've lived on the street. I've been on safe parking lots. I've been in shelters. And I'm standing here to say that it's very, very sad, and it's humiliating to see the homelessness on the streets, in the communities, in the counties, on the highways. It's very sad. And when I had to live in that environment, I felt like, well, God rejected me. But he put me in a place where I was not just there, but I was needed. We are not numbers, we are people. Everybody who goes through or has to come down this path does not have a history of drug abuse or mental illness. There are some of us who were raised on well, valid, sound foundations, and I was one of those persons. And I had an opportunity with the governor in 2020, and as well as the mayor. They came through the tiny house village, and I was a part of that tour, and I was one of the persons that they had a chance to interview. And the governor's question to me was, how did I do it? And my response back to him was that I've learned to balance life on uneven platforms. Sometimes things absolutely does not make sense, but there are times that we have to put the sensible things down and look at what's necessary. And housing individuals who cannot take care of themselves is very necessary. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Williams, for sharing your story. Sally Perkins, and then we're going to see if Aaron Upham would like to speak, and then Dr. Douglas Jarvie.
Sally Perkins, District 4. For the record, I am a member of the Coalition to End Homelessness, but I'm speaking today as an individual. All other members of the coalition have plausible deniability for anything I might say. Each week, the coalition meeting begins with a reflection provided by one of our members, usually Rosemary Powers. On August 2nd, I was privileged to provide the reflection, and given this council's work at the time, I reflected on the nature of emergency, specifically the emergency in homelessness here in Pierce County. Because some people think that homelessness is a chronic problem, I wondered out loud, how many chronic problems, if left unaddressed, don't progress to an emergency? Well, they all progress to an emergency. Then I reflected on the question, for whom is homelessness an emergency? For some folks, homelessness is an inconvenience in their neighborhood or an annoyance or a reason to call 911 or get angry. But for unhoused people sleeping overnight on the street, having nowhere to stay is an emergency every single day and every single night. Temporary housing communities, interim process, emergency process, whatever, are an obvious and constructive response, and you all know that. For our coalition, homelessness, especially street homelessness, is an emergency every day, all the time, 24/7. And so in my reflection, I suggested some options. Well, we could give up. Seems like we have very little impact on people who don't want to hear what we have to say. We could speak truth to power. What if every Tuesday was Tell the Truth Tuesday for our elected officials? And I suggested that we might choose to take the advice of Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers fame, or actually it was his mom who said this. In times of emergency or disaster, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. And then this vision came into my mind, one of people, a whole lot of people in bright blue t-shirts that say, look for the helpers. But here's the best part. Each of you can qualify to receive your very own Look for the Helpers t-shirt today at this very meeting. Your yes vote on O-2024-540S empowers you to select your very own Look for the Helpers t-shirt, because helpers know that temporary housing community options are essential to the well-being of unhoused people. I'd like to give all 7 of these t-shirts away today for a unanimous vote on this ordinance. Lest you be concerned that this looks like an unseemly financial inducement, the shirts cost $2.99 at Michael's, and T-Shirt Men, a black-owned Hilltop business and advocate for homeless people, screen printed them for $8 a shirt. Total value per shirt, $10.99 plus sales tax, for a total value of $11.32. This modest cost is my personal token of appreciation for council members who know the meaning of yes. And so, in your very hearing today, the blue shirt, look for the helper's vision has begun to come true. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins. Aaron, do you wish to testify? Aaron Elpem? Oh, I'm sorry, Aaron. And then Dr. Douglas Jarvie, and then Kara Gadbury.
Hello, I'm Aaron Upham. I'm the operations manager over at Marine Howard. I was formerly over at 69th and Proctor. I just wanted to say we do a lot of good work. We're able to touch a lot of different people. So passing this ordinance would do a lot of great for the communities that we would be able to put our homes in. So if you guys could say yes, that'd be great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Dr. Douglas Jarvie, then Kara Gadbury, and then Kim Soto.
Hi, my name is Dr. Douglas Jarvie. I am the Director of Social Services for the Salvation Army of Tacoma. I am here as a representative of the Salvation Army as a religious nonprofit organization to ask you to pass this motion 02024540. I believe that emergency temporary housing works, and I have some experience. I know that we house families for a few weeks, a few months, and during that time we provide food, we provide case management for them, and they have the possibility of change. They have the possibility to put aside a little bit of money. They get a job, they put aside some money, and then at the end of their temporary housing stay, they're able to pay a down payment and get a permanent place to live. And I believe in temporary housing. I believe it works. I would like to, on a personal note, I would like to plead for religious freedom. And what I mean in this case is that I've recently been church shopping. The church that I was attending was not fulfilling for me. And I found a very socially active church, which happens to be First Christian Church of Tacoma Disciples of Christ. And they're the hosts of the Lehigh Village. And they're amazing, amazing people. And they opened up their property, they opened up their space for Lehigh and for the people to recover. And they don't even have time limits. They're amazing people. And it reminded me earlier when Ms. Rhett Butler was talking, Ms. Red Hunt was talking about the experience with the safe parking. We had a whole bunch of churches that wanted to do safe parking. They wanted to help. They see a need. And they want to do something. And now they can do safe parking. And I believe that there are churches, there are religious organizations, there are community groups, there are veterans groups out there that want to help. And this tiny house project is just one solution of many. And it's a way to step forward, and it's a way to let our community help and to let our community work with the county to house people and to get people to change their lives for a better situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kara, followed by Kim Soto, and then Joe from Lehigh.
Hi, my name is Cara Gadbury, and I'm a case manager with Fob Hope. I'm going to be reading off of these papers because I do have numbers, and I definitely don't want to mess those up. At the last council meeting that we attended, Councilmember Mello asked for the numbers of homeless veterans. And although I can't give you a completely accurate count, I can tell you that the 2023 point in time count for homeless veterans was 175. In 2024, that number has gone up 27 people and is now at 202. In 2023, Fob Hope Veterans Village served 161 homeless veterans, permanently housing 93 with an 87% sustainability rating. Our sustainability rating is high because we continue to stay in contact and check on our housed veterans. They also know if they need anything that they can reach back out to us at any time. Currently, in doing outreach, we have assessed 4 encampments in which there are a combined total of 32 homeless veterans. When we asked these veterans if they were ever asked to fill out any paperwork or whether they had gone through any of our systems as far as, getting into our systems, basically, all of them said no. So that means our pit counts aren't even right. So when we think about this, we need to remember that there are also people who are still not being served. And the more encampments that we have, the more people we can help. Being able to divide them into veterans, family, whatever, that does benefit greatly these individuals, because then people who specialize in these areas can focus on them. But when we add the 32 to the 202, we have 234 homeless veterans. That is a problem, considering that we know but have yet to assess several more encampments that have been identified through other homeless veterans. We're going to get to those camps in due time, but I can guarantee we will find several more veterans. Fob Hope does not give up on its homeless veterans. For example, Tammy received a call 2 weeks before we weren't allowed to bring in any more veterans. The call came from a higher-up from Neighborhood and Community Services of Tacoma, alerting us to a homeless veteran sitting on the corner of 66th and Proctor. They asked if we could please go get him and help him. We immediately went and we picked him up. He was an older gentleman with long hair and an unkempt beard. He was wearing raggedy clothes, which is fine. We took him to our village and we found out that he had had a PTSD episode, and the staff at the village he was previously residing in couldn't handle it, so they kicked him out.
Please conclude your remarks.
Okay, so he would have died on the streets if we weren't able to help him. We did get him housed. There is an opportunity to save lives here, so please vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kim, followed by Joe if you want to, and then Shannon Hanley.
Hello, my name is Kim Soto, excuse me. I'm currently a resident at the Tiny Homes, and I think it's very important to have these. They allow you to have self-respect, you being able to even brush your teeth, wash your clothes, take a shower. It's all very important. And the staff there are excellent. They allow you to be yourself. They talk with you, get your mind going straight on what your goals are and what you should be doing. The case management, Brooklyn, Alita, no. Get into the computer with me, because I don't know anything about a computer, and help me to learn how to do this. They keep looking for permanent housing. They supply you with bedding, your hygiene. They even help you with your pets and emotional support animals, providing food and that for them also. The staff is very professional. I appreciate them. Stephanie, Bree, Joe, and I hope that you keep this going, because it's very needed, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Joe, would you like to provide comment? Then Shannon Hanley, and then Oneida Arnold.
Yes, hello, my name is Joe Perv. I'm a Senior Operation Manager with Low Income Housing Institute, and I had an honor of serving Ms. Rhonda, who spoke earlier, and serving Ms. Kim, and unfortunately Shannon won't be able to speak. I'm sure she had some great words to come. She also went through our program, but she had to go to work because she continues to thrive. She's already moved into permanent housing from 6th and Orchard. So in 2019, I was actually at this building, but I wasn't here as a Lehigh staff member. I didn't have the opportunity to serve a lot of these amazing individuals. I was actually in here because I was going through the program. And I was sitting here from a different direction. I actually was here with the same two individuals, Sharon and John Brown, but they were here, and I didn't know much about Lehigh except for the fact that I had an opportunity to receive services and case management and a place that was safe and a place to lock up my property and things of that nature. And it was new to me, and it was something that was amazing. what this gentleman, John Brown, who actually brought me in the program, didn't know that I used to own my own business. He didn't know why I was homeless and what had happened. He didn't know I'd had two children pass away, and I went down a dark road. And it was very hard for me to get back onto my feet. But he did say something that he's always said to me throughout these years. He said, I'm not concerned about what you did. I'm concerned. I just want you to be successful. If you need anything from me, please let me know. He said the same thing to me for 5 years. This is the type of example that I try my best to follow. And that's what these shelters provide in these tiny house villages. They provide things that like Miss Shannon, who had to go back to work, she left work, came here, and hoping she had enough time to give her peace, and then to follow that up. She had to go back to work because she couldn't make it, but she took the time to do that because she realized how important it is to make sure that we take a moment to come up here and tell the truth, and and just to really truly show the impact. I now have an opportunity to serve so many individuals and to truly put the care into them and into their lives, and to provide these types of services and this type of shelter, I think there's not enough words I think I could say to truly express it. So I truly hope that we take this into consideration and truly pass this ordinance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Joe. Shannon Hanley? No, Shannon? Thank you very much. Ms. Arnold? And I saw Tim Fairley had to leave. So then we have, is it Janie Hutchins after that?
Hi, my name is Oneida Arnold.
Okay. I will get it right one of these days.
Yeah, definitely. So I actually left my prepared notes at my last meeting. But I just want to say I don't see homelessness is such a challenge everywhere. But this is such a solution, and I just don't see why everyone's not just going for it with it. You have the property, they're just ready to build. You have the wraparound services, Lehigh, and I just don't see why it's a problem. Okay, maybe people in the neighborhood will be uncomfortable with it, but that's something that you can work with. There are. And by the way, I'm on those Friday calls myself, but I'm not affiliated with any of the organizations other than jumping in when I can or forwarding people on, because I do go out on a regular basis with another group actually to do food and other services, and we just move to wherever we can find people. Much more difficult now that people are being swept from one side of the bridge to the other or whatever. But I just don't see, this is the solution. This could be a model. It's not new. I'm from Seattle. I have a sister in Seattle, so I'm there frequently. There is a tiny home, a temporary housing community in her neighborhood that's been there for a while. People come and go as they find more permanent housing. I see children there. I see adults. I see animals. I just don't understand why this is not everyone. Everyone can't see this as a solution. What is our alternative? And I hate to see that money on the table and just dissipate. That's, we're better than that. The word I wanted to emphasize is community. Community is what keeps us going. It's through the bad times. It helped us through a horrific pandemic, and now I would say homelessness is a pandemic too, and we need to huddle around and do what we can. Please, please vote for this. These are our people that we love. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oneida. Janie, please correct me. Hutchins?
It's Jan.
Easier.
Jan Hutchins, not to be confused with your fellow city council member. I've been working in the field of homelessness for over 25 years in Pierce County, mainly with families experiencing homelessness. And during that time, I was working with an agency that worked in prevention and providing housing. And all our time and energy went into providing emergency shelter, emergency housing, because the problem kept growing. And finally, in the last 2 or 3 years, I dedicated myself, since we know that the cure for homelessness is housing, mainly affordable housing, dedicated myself to developing some affordable housing and a hygiene center, which will be opening next month in the Lakes area. Worked on both of those at the same time because we need both. Since retiring, I've been working with the Coalition for the Homelessness during emergency weather, alerts reaching out to those on the street just to try to keep people alive. So I've gone from trying to help people learn the skills to keep housing, just keep them alive tonight, not tomorrow night, just tonight, with a bottle of cold water or hot coffee. And for those of us who are comfortable in this room, I think it may be acceptable to call this a chronic problem. For those of us who are out on the street, and I'm going to personalize this by telling you that I met one woman who was close to my age, and I happened to have some of my laundry in a little T-shirt that was a little bit too small for me, and I offered it to her. And she saw the bigger T-shirt over there, and she wanted that, and it was kind of ugly. She wanted that because that big T-shirt would hide her figure. And that, I've been working all these years, and that still stunned me. I'm still learning lessons every day that I go out on the street. So for us, it may be chronic. For them, it's an emergency. I hope you can see it as an emergency. I really thank you for your time, because whether or not we agree, we all want a better Pierce County. But I do hope to see some of you walking out with Sally's T-shirt. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. That's everyone we have signed up in council chambers. Does anybody else in council chambers who hasn't had an opportunity to speak wish to testify? We'll soon move to the Zoom room. Okay, not seeing anyone come to the podium in council chambers. Mr. Dominique, who wishes to share in the Zoom room?
For any member of the public that would like to provide comment on proposal number O-2024-540S, please press the raise hand icon in Zoom or *9 on your telephone keypad. And we have 8 hands at this time, Chair, and we will start with Ms. Pritchard. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, respected Chairman Mello and respected members of the council. I am Faluina Pritchard, Executive Director of Asia Pacific Cultural Center. I'm also the chair of the Pierce County Asian Pacific Island Coalition and a board member of Pierce County Affordable Housing Consortium and an experienced developer for senior low-income housing. I am coming today to ask you to please support Ordinance 02024-540S. The Human Services Department issued an RFP for a 24/7 modular or tiny house community, and Lehigh was awarded the funds. Lehigh purchased a site in unincorporated Pierce County using county funds. The tiny houses have been built and are ready to be deployed to the site, but Lehigh needs a part of the code to be amended for the temporary village to be set up. This ordinance makes it possible for the Spanaway Tiny House Village and the county's proposed stability site to move forward. Temporary housing communities are often a necessary first step towards a person's transition into permanent housing. The findings of fact and the point in time count clearing documents the need to increase shelter resources at this time before winter sets in. That's coming up soon. Do we still really need and want our people to be out there? Non-congregate shelter is an underutilized resource in the county. We know that people will take the service of non-congregate shelter if the option is available. My dear council members, all of you, I know you're there. You have been chosen to be leaders of this county to make good decisions for the rights of the people to live healthy, safe, and happy. I know you know what to do. So I am urging you today, please approve this important ordinance today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kim Zatcher. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Mello, and thank you to the council for hearing our testimony today. My name is Kim Zocker. I'm the CEO of Comprehensive Life Resources, and I'm testifying in support of Ordinance 2024-540S. Comprehensive Life Resources has been a safety net behavioral health provider here in Pierce County for more than 50 years. And listening to the dialogue around this ordinance, there seems to be universal agreement that we need many more affordable housing and supported housing units here in Pierce County. We also need high quality and effective behavioral health interventions available for individuals when and where they need them. Important work is going on around these goals, but unfortunately, we will need years and ongoing public-private investment to see them to fruition. The question seems to be how to get from now to the future that we all want. Our agency serves over 1,000 unhoused individuals a year across the county, many with serious and complex health and physical health and behavioral health issues. Most have experienced years of trauma that they carry along with their treasured but meager belongings. They want a shelter that is safe, supports their recovery, and allows for privacy and dignity. Over and over, our clients have told us that for many of them, congregate shelter does not provide them those things. This ordinance allows our churches and nonprofit organizations to establish more single occupancy shelter options. The ordinance does not allow these to be permanent, but time limited while we continue to build sustainable long-term housing options that people can afford. For those of us doing this work every day, this is what we need to help get folks off the street. I really hope the council will lend us your support and approve Ordinance 2024-540S. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Terry Hurd. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Terry Hurd. Mr. Chairman, County Council members, please bear with me. In the early 70s, I joined the Milwaukee Road, and I was working there, and we had a lot of homeless people who rode the railroad and lived in what we called hobo jungles. There was no support for them, but we tolerated each other and worked together. Nowadays, you see it all over Pierce County of homeless people living where they can, how they can. I've never had an issue with these people, and they truly do need assistance. Though I do feel that this assistance that you're talking about should be developed and put forward around infrastructure that will support the needs of those people, which is usually the cities that seem to be pushing their problem out onto us in the country. I've listened and read of what you have for suggestions. If that was used on our southern border, I wonder how that would function. But truly, if you build it, they will come. Please consider an amendment that puts those amenities to support these people that need a helping hand up around an infrastructure that will support them. They need bus fare, bus movement, food, all those things that all the rest of us take for granted because we have a car. These people need to be able to move from point A to point B to get the support they need. It's good to provide the support for those who need a helping up. I really pray that you're going to help those who want to help. I know there's a small portion that don't want the support, that want to live outside of the rest of the norms of what we consider as a civilized society. Please help those people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Lynn B. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Lynn Borcherding, and from the reading that I have done on this ordinance, it seems to be tied to the $2.5 million available in ARPA funds. That seems to be what is spurring this on. And it also appears to me that the homeless are being used as pawns once again to get the hands on, to get your hands on Fed money. And that's not okay. The regulations, this ordinance, you are sidestepping county regulations. These are regulations that you guys put in place. You need to play by the rules. You need to do it properly, not take shortcuts in order to get your hands on the money. That's all.
Next, we have Courtney Love. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Am I heard?
Yes, we can hear you.
My name is Courtney Love. I am I'm the Director of State and Local Advocacy for the Lived Experience Coalition, a group of people who have experienced homelessness. We don't speak for everyone. We are not a monolith, but we do come together and make consensus decisions and form consensus opinions. And we support this measure. So please use homeless people money, but because we're here for it. I want to point out that the number one reason homeless is due to loss of family. There's often eviction involved in that, and it's a part of my story. That 40% of people experiencing homelessness are there because of a medical emergency and its associated debt. And 40% of unhoused people have jobs, which means we lack living wages and housing affordability. And I would like to also mention the Dalai Lama, who has said, if there is conflict between science and Buddhism, Buddhism must change. And so I ask that no matter what your feelings are about the facts presented today or any other day around homelessness, and I will say that I believe in the last 2 years at some point, the coordinated entry system informed us that at least 120 people are going homeless, connecting with homelessness services for the first time in their lives each week, 120 each week. And that statistic is old now. So regardless of your feelings about the facts, I hope that you can make judgments on the fact, make decisions based on the facts. This is highly needed policy change. That these temporary shelters, they're called temporary because the people inside them should be inside them for temporary periods of time. This is a stepping stone to more permanent housing. So we need these kinds of services until other metrics are resolved. Like, how do we handle medical debt? How do we handle labor justice, housing justice in a larger, broader scale? Until then, we will have homelessness and we will need temporary shelters. So, and we also need geographic equity. I've heard a council member mention that they don't have homelessness in their rural community, but I assert that the homelessness is simply less visible in those spaces, or they've moved closer to services that are not available in their communities. So please offer your neighbors who are falling out of housing equal services in your area. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us.
Next, we have Casey Twiggs. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you and good afternoon, respected council members. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you. My name is Casey Twiggs, and I'm the membership coordinator of the Tacoma-Pierce County Affordable Housing Consortium. Thank you for taking this issue. I reside in District 4. I'm here to express AHC's support for proposed ordinance 2024-540. This ordinance marks a critical step in addressing homelessness in Pierce County by providing individuals with a path towards permanent, affordable housing and stability. We must create more opportunities across Pierce County for those experiencing homelessness to transition off the streets into housing. Homelessness is not just a concern in Tacoma. It's prevalent all across Pierce County, as Courtney previously pointed out before me. Every individual does deserve to live with dignity. Through Lehigh's proven model, 60 individuals per year can be provided housing and connected to services and support through a coordinated care system. We urge the county council and Executive Dan Meyer to support the development of temporary housing communities. These time-limited housing options offer relief from weather. We've experienced that this weekend, especially safe place to store personal items, access to hygiene facilities, garbage services, case management, and staff support all in one place. These accommodations also set individuals on a path to contribute to society through job placement, job keeping, permanent housing, and stability. And we feel that not by allowing temporary housing communities, Pierce County contributes to the challenge of unsheltered homelessness. So I hope you will do the right thing and allow individuals to stay in their communities with a roof over their heads by supporting these ordinances, and this one specifically 540. Thank you so much for everything that you do, taking this issue up, hearing our comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us.
Next, we have Rosemary Powers. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
I hope I'm unmuted now.
Yes, you are.
Sorry. Chair Mello and members of the council, my name is Rosemary Powers. I am a member of the Coalition to End Homelessness, and I serve as president of the League of Women Voters in our county. But today I'm speaking as a resident of District 7. And I have to say that I smiled very broadly when Sally Perkins offered you all a T-shirt. And I thought, really I should just say yes to that and that would be enough. But I do want to make a couple of points, so I will make them anyway. I'm urging you today to pass the ordinance that's before us that will remove barriers to the siting of temporary housing communities in unincorporated areas of Pierce County. I understand the stated concerns about unregulated encampments, but do not understand opposition to creating a way forward for approved and well-supervised sites that would permit humanitarian responses to the crisis of street homelessness. The emphasis throughout the proposed ordinance is on sites being well-regulated, and the requirement of an MOU between any proposed site operators and the county's Human Services Department sets strong expectations for offering shelter. A huge benefit of the ordinance will be to encourage nonprofit groups to consider taking on the development and management of such well-regulated temporary sites. This is currently a humanitarian option not available to them. I do agree that permanent housing with support services where needed is the ultimate goal for addressing the housing needs of residents of all income levels, but we can work on both needs at the same time. People need to be able to come in out of extreme weather and unsafe conditions while permanent housing is being developed. We know that living on the streets decreases life expectancy by 2 to 3 decades. Too many people suffer deeply when there are no immediate appropriate options for shelter. And finally, as towns and cities in our county lean into the Supreme Court decision in Grants Pass versus Johnson by passing ordinances banning camping, sleeping, or even resting in their public spaces, More people without options will seek shelter outside the town and city limits. Pierce County can help address this ongoing crisis by passing Ordinance 2024-540S. Thank you for your time, and I do hope you wear those T-shirts.
Thank you.
Next, we have Teresa Power Drudas. Please state your name for the records, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, council members, and can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I do notice when I'm in the council chambers, sometimes it sounds like the people on Zoom are shouting, so I hope you figured out a way to tone us down. In the meantime, I'm here, of course, in favor of 540, and to say that there are a few things that are more irritating to me than false dichotomies. It is false to assume that you cannot provide temporary housing at the same time keep working on permanent affordable housing. And it's false to assume that you can have no compassion for people who are renting out their spaces and not getting paid and sinking under the weight of their own mortgages, and still have compassion for people who are being evicted. Those are false dichotomies. We don't need them. We have too many of them in our whole, good Lord, politicized world. So if we can just focus on the reality that solving the problem of a temporary place for someone to lay down their head and sleep in our county does not cause people to lose rent. It causes people who are homeless to have a place to lay their heads. I also want to say a response to something that was said earlier. One of the reasons I'm not going with any kind of script is everyone's already said all the ideas that I had in my head to bring to you. So I was listening to what people said, and I want to say to the man who mentioned city is pushing their homelessness onto the county, that is completely false. I mean, Tacoma is responsible for 80% of the sheltering that happens in Pierce County, but we're only 25% of the population. So, you know, I think it might be the other way around, that by not dealing with this, by not putting ourselves forward as a county, by not taking advantage of the potential that's there in these federal funds, we are actually pushing it onto the city. So, no, we didn't decide to have a bunch of homeless people so we could take advantage of federal dollars. The federal dollars are there to help counties like ours do the right thing. So I encourage you to do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And next we have Michelle Douglas. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Michelle, are you able to unmute yourself? There we go.
Yes, apologies.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Mello and the rest of the Pierce County Council. I appreciate having the opportunity to testify today in support of 02024-540S. My name is Michelle Douglas, and I'm the CEO of Emergency Food Network. We serve communities all across the county and see on a regular basis what an incredible need there is for additional homeless services. In my role and with my community connection, I have access to see how those homeless services are not zero-sum game. So we don't need only permanent housing. We need both temporary and permanent housing so that we can get people off the street, get them into case management, get them services, and get them connected for better lives and shelter with dignity. We've seen over a 20% increase since 2023 based on the point-in-time count of those identifying as homeless. And while we know that that count is just an incredible understatement of how many people are actually homeless, right? That relies on 24 hours of finding people in their current situations and counting them. It's just, there's no way that it's accurate. We know based on other years that it's always a chronic undercount. So with that in mind, we know we don't have anywhere near enough adequate beds. we see the impact every day here at Emergency Food Network of this increasing temperature disparity of heat and cold. Not only do people need water in that situation and food, but they also need shelter. We are facing an incredible winter ahead, and we need people to have a roof over their heads so that they're not out in the elements. I mean, just this last weekend is a great example of the horrors that can happen when you're not sheltered. We need every type of housing in Pierce County. We need it in places with access to case management. We need it in places with food support. We need it in places with community standards. We need it in places with case management. These options provide all of those accessibility points. This isn't a partisan issue. I'm not sure how it has become such a partisan issue, but food and shelter are the basic needs of our community, and this goes across any kind of political beliefs. It's across all sectors, and it's across all of Pierce County. We're in a housing crisis right now. We have this opportunity. The ARPA dollars are going to expire. We have this chance to move in and do different things. We know that housing people in their communities keep them connected to their families. It keeps them connected to their community, to things that are important to them. This is an opportunity to house people with dignity. Yes, it is a short-term solution, but it's incredibly important. Thank you for considering.
Thank you for being with us.
Next we have Gunther. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Can I be heard?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good afternoon. My name is Todd Gunther, and I'm here to support temporary housing. For those who don't know me, I'm the Deputy Mayor of Orting. During my first term, I became homeless personally. By day, I slept with rats and panhandled on corners, and by night, I governed a place like you. I've also co-founded a tiny home village, supervised 2 shelters, and worked in outreach. So I'm only here speaking for myself tonight, but having been in the foxholes with these folks, I thought I'd highlight a couple points. First, as a previous village manager, my experience mirrors those of other speakers like Tammy. These residents find ways to give back, and communities fall in love with them. I heard a story from a school recently whose children love making crafts for the homeless place next door to them. At my own village, children came over at Easter with their parents. Second, I want to applaud those who've created this strong village policy. Those who pointed out the difference between well-run villages and poorly run ones are spot on. Business owners deserve clean streets, and I'm glad Councilmember Krueger has represented them. This ordinance provides for privacy fencing, background checks, case management, security, neighborhood meetings, and a code of conduct. Best practices like Austin, Texas, or Orting. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. Well-managed villages succeed, and it seems like this is a good foundation here. I spent a lot of time living with this population, and the majority of the homeless are good people, and all they want is a fair shake. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us, Councilmember.
And those are all the hands that I see right now, Chair.
Thank you. Well, with no other hands in the Zoom room and no other members of the public and council members wishing to provide comment, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. I'll open it up for final remarks by council members. I'll just remind those watching, we debated a similar measure. We've amended it a bit since then, but we debated a similar measure about a month ago. That was an emergency ordinance which required 5 votes. This is not an emergency measure. It is an interim land use regulation, meaning it'll be in place for 6 months while we direct the Planning and Public Works Department to take on the permanent version of these regulations. So this requires a majority to pass, so 4 of 7. Certainly hoping for unanimity like Ms. Perkins. But this requires 4 of 7 just to make sure folks can follow their local government and requires a signature by the executive. So it requires at least a simple majority vote of the council and signature by the county executive for it to be put into law. So just wanted to make sure folks could follow how their local government here works. Let me open it up for final remarks by council members before we take a vote. We'll begin with Councilmember Denson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I want to thank everyone who took the time to come and testify on Zoom today. The testimony was really really made a big impact on me, and it's always amazing to hear your stories. And I want to thank all of you who are working so hard to help the residents of Pierce County. As council members, I've always really felt like it's our ultimate responsibility to protect the health and safety of our residents and our community. To me, that is the ultimate goal of what we need to be doing as elected representatives and stewards and caretakers of this county. I think we can all agree that unsanctioned encampments are not good for anyone. They're certainly not good for the folks that are living out there in the elements, in unsanctioned places, having to move place to place, just trying to find a place to go. We know that, because people have studied this, and it's just logical that the longer people are out in unsanctioned encampments and having to move and having instability, the more trauma that can happen, the more negative things that can happen. Life spirals downward in most cases, as I would think would happen with most of us. Life gets a lot harder and harder, and it's harder to dig your way out of a situation like that as well. I think we also know that unsanctioned encampments, we hear it from people all the time, are bad for neighborhoods, they're bad for parks, they're bad for businesses, they're bad for our environment. There's all sorts of health and safety issues around having unsanctioned encampments. And we also can appreciate, or certainly I can, that temporary home communities, as we've heard today, like tiny home villages, are a solution. It's a short-term solution for folks that provide stable, monitored, sanctioned, supervised housing, safe places for people to go, where there are regulatory safeguards, such as the many that are in this piece of legislation, thanks to the best practices that we've collected, thanks to the advice of other jurisdictions, thanks to the advice of our departments here at Pierce County, and thanks to the work of our staff and the drafters. We've got the safeguards to make sure that people can live in a safe place while receiving the services. And people are in these situations for a whole lot of different reasons, as we've heard in testimony. Some people may just not be able to afford first and last month rent. They may be working. They may just be having a hard time finding an affordable place to live. Some people may need medical respite. Some people may need substance abuse treatment or mental health treatment or job training treatment or any number of things to help them work through whatever issues that they have to access permanent housing. Some may just be waiting for affordable housing, which this council is working hard on building, and we've invested a lot in it, but it takes a long time. We know that these tiny home villages, because people have their own space, they have a community, they are learning how to prepare themselves to be successful in that permanent housing. It really is a perfect stepping stone for folks so that they can address any needs, any situations, and prepare themselves to live in permanent housing. That's obviously the ultimate goal of all of us. This council, is really working hard on solutions. We have a solution here. This wasn't our idea. This was an idea brought to us by the experts in this field, by a lot of providers here today. This solution will make a real difference. It's the difference that our constituents are asking for, are demanding from us. We are trying to make an honest effort to make a difference in homelessness in Pierce County. I will definitely be supporting this. I'm excited to support this. I'm excited to see the difference this makes in the lives of our residents, the lives saved. I'm really thankful for all of the community groups, whether you're a group that is dedicating to helping unhoused people, or you're a faith community, or you're a fraternal organization. We have so many people that are excited to step up and help their neighbors. But we need to pass this policy to allow them to do that throughout the county. And there is homeless throughout the county, and we all need to do our part. And I'm really excited to see this happen. I want to thank Chair Mello for really spearheading this, and all of my fellow council members that have worked on this. And thank you all today for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Denson. Councilmember Herrera.
Thank you, Chair. In my opinion, I don't think this debate is about if homelessness is on the rise or anything like that. This is a debate on where the money is going to go. And we wouldn't even be talking about this if we didn't have these ARPA funds coming forward to us. We probably wouldn't be talking about this at all. But when it comes to this, we have differing opinions on how we're going to help homeless people in our community. And as a person who has some experience in some of this, I've been in tiny homes at 3 o'clock in the morning on Christmas. I've been in the camps during a thunderstorm, before and after. I've seen this. I've seen this before tiny homes, how people lived in the gully in Tacoma before there was tiny homes. So I have a little bit of experience on some, and then I've also seen how communities have changed when the tiny homes came. You know, some cultures talk about leadership and how we approach leadership is thinking 7 generations ahead. We make a decision now, how's that going to affect 7 generations ahead? You know, we have temporary money. This COVID money is temporary money with a time clock on it. And yes, we probably need some temporary shelters. But the long-term legacy of this COVID money that came about, that has been given to us to do something tangible for this, I think it's really important to have something that will last longer than just a temporary housing thing. That in 5 years, we don't even know that that place ever existed there. Affordable housing, I think, is where this money needs to go. And, you know, in 50 years, that housing will still be here. And this is an opportunity to plus up shovel-ready affordable housing here in Pierce County. And also, you know, Pierce County is doing a lot for homelessness stuff. There's a lot of things for, you know, FOB Hope. I feel for FOB Hope being closed down. I think it was funded by the city of Tacoma, and it's over. The funding is over. And that we would love to do something specific for veterans. You know, because I think it's really important to be specific for certain needs. You were doing very well, and it seems like we could do more on that thing. When it comes to veterans, there's a lot of things out there. A good example is we do have a tiny village out in the county. It's the one out in Ording, and that one's doing very well. And I've been involved with that. I painted the inside of those. When they first came about. I've seen success there. But one of the biggest problems they have out there is the location. And it not being close to services. I mean, they've come up with some solutions, some busing and things like that, but it's just like when it comes down to like real estate, location, location, location. When we start putting maybe these temporary villages out in the county, some people may live out in the county. If you call the police or an ambulance, takes twice as long to get those services versus being in downtown Tacoma or in other major cities here. So I just take pause on just kind of running forward and spending this money that is here laid at our feet to help our homeless. So with that, I am in favor of using this money for permanent affordable housing. And I appreciate everybody's work in this, and I understand that this homeless issue affects everybody. And with that, Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. Several years ago, we sat in these chambers. Some of us were here. I do not believe Councilmember Herrera was at the time, to debate the now Good Neighbor Village. And we talked about land use, and we talked about how we would support our unhoused neighbors and how wonderful this program would be because it was a permanent solution to chronic homelessness. And I had to be convinced, and I actually saw it in person. And I think it is something that really has a lot of merit and value. It's expensive, and it is going to really work. It's not expensive. It's expensive. Our ARPA ask for that was $17 million. And I really had mixed feelings on it, but I think it's going to really do some good in our county. But it's not open yet, and people are dying. People are slipping further and further into mental illness. They are slipping further and further into addiction. They are slipping into areas that are going to land them in our jail. We aren't helping the population that we are hoping will end up, if that's where they need to go, in our Good Neighbor Village. Instead, we are letting them slip further and further through the cracks. This is a way to create stability instead of instability, safety instead of unsafe. It is a way to make sure that parents aren't losing their children or their lives, that we have families that stay together, that we have veterans who are getting the services that they need, people who are employed stay employed while being unhoused. We create stability with these sites. And when we vote no on something like this, we are saying we don't think that's a good idea, that people shouldn't have stability, that we shouldn't be valuing the human life that is behind this person who is currently experiencing homelessness. They are a human being. And I just don't understand how we can be so strongly for something like the Good Neighbor Village and not be for something that helps support people, stabilize them enough to be able to enter that type of permanent supportive housing. And that's what I see this as. These are stepping stones to permanent supportive housing, to affordable housing, to finding reunification with your family, finding stability. That is why it is a temporary housing solution. It is not permanent supportive housing. It is not affordable housing. It is temporary. And it is absolutely needed in our system right now because the numbers are way too high and people are dying. So I really hope and implore my colleagues that are sitting here, I don't know if they'll enjoy the blue shirts, but I hope that they will. I am excited to earn one tonight. But I would have voted this way without a t-shirt, just to be clear. This is the right thing to do. We have areas in our county that have city-like infrastructure, city-like population, and have very few services for unhoused. And so they are displaced and moved and shuffled and shoved around our county like pawns, and they are people. And I just can't handle it when we think about it like that. So, sorry, I'm getting emotional. I will stop, but just understand that at the end of the day, these are human beings. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Hitchin. Councilor Coover.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to speak here. And I just want to say, in the room here, the emotions are running high, and they have been for quite some time. And no one here questions anyone's sincerity in the love of their work and their care for their fellow man. No one is being dismissed in their desires to help, and no one here doesn't want to also help. But we have a situation where the wish lists are growing long, and we have multiple expenses that need to be trimmed, and the goals need to be refined to make them more attainable and affordable. And I think of globally, the greatest existential threat to mankind is climate change. So you're competing with that. That is depleting the dollars available that people have. You're competing with money that wants for transit. You're competing with money because we have an infrastructure that's crumbling. You're competing for money because sidewalks are needed at the schools. And the list goes on and on. There is a finite amount of resources available. So, you know, I go through this ordinance and I look at it. There are things that we're not told. And I'll start with going through what I see as shortfalls or flaws or questionable items that are in this ordinance. And starting with it on page 1, line 18, it says the county is facing a public health and safety. We're tolerating one. This has been going on for decades through the ages. Mankind, you know, around the world is in a condition that is not particularly pleasant. If anyone's listening to the global news, you understand what I'm discussing. You know, the supply of emergency shelter is inadequate. And I don't know of any place in the country where it is adequate. There just isn't enough anywhere. And then in line 35, it speaks to violence and crime. And what was kind of disturbing when I have someone telling me that in Olympia, there is a shelter that the back third of it is cartel run. So don't go back there. That's off limits. Help the people in the front 2/3. So I get a little nervous, you know, when I hear things like that. And it has the behavioral health issues, depression or alcoholism. You know, that is something you don't have to be homeless to have that situation. That doesn't discriminate between those who have houses and those who do not. Which is the same on the next page for having serious health conditions and vermin. I had a house in my district that made that hoarder show because of all the rats that were running around. So that is not uncommon. And then it has, you know, 158 who died while unsheltered. The fentanyl issue, we have drug laws that really aren't laws. When are we going to stop the drugs coming across the border? When are we going to make that illegal? And then I'm going down a little further, requires jurisdictions to make adequate provisions. How is that defined? What is adequate? In the jurisdictions, you know, I ask, what about the barriers to building homes? So I'll address a little bit more on that later. And then something else when it discussed Low-Income Housing Institute. Today we had in meetings about concerns with the ability of the 3 presenters and the shortage of staff. And I have a letter that was written regarding, you know, Lehigh. And I'll just mention, aside from other things that were said, but part of it was a lack of staffing and that we have that problem. And so if we're going to be having more of these opening up, where will staffing come from? The appropriation of $2.5 million, that's one and done. Then what? I'm looking at potentially preventing the utilization of the $2.5 million. The amendment that we have had that is redesigning, I want to say, on the budget accounts for that. It's not being wasted. And then I get down to page 3, and it has the proposed amendments are consistent with the STEP program. The STEP program was quite an eye-opener to me. And it has a model ordinance in here for future rules and regulations. And I guess I would ask folks to look this up because this is quite the plan. 38, 39, let's see, 36 pages. It demonstrates guidance for updating your housing element. There's permanent support housing barrier, you know, rules and regulations. So it's already laid out. And this is from the state. Let's see, that was, the model ordinance issued last May. Then moving on, it has, the WAC allows exemptions for the homeless without conforming. This is special treatment.
We need more homes, yet the laws that are being passed by the state and by the feds and endorsed by the majority party are reducing the amount of homes that can be built. I got a family that wants to be able to build a home for their child to keep the family on the property. If the rules change, you can't do that. That's wrong. Then to avoid an imminent threat. Well, this imminent threat is global, and that's just adding a lot of drama. Then we have the public, it's a growing number of people experiencing homelessness. Yes, it is. It's everywhere. And it makes it difficult when you have borders where there are millions of people, I forget what the number was, of just touches that they have of people crossing over and over. Then I go into Exhibit C. And it says, except for temporary housing, they shall file an affidavit. So that is being removed. And then my concern, I had mentioned about how will the parcels be discerned that are in Spanaway. When you have two parcels, then that's going to be quite a lot of folks that will be living there that won't have things to do. The Good Neighbor Village, they will have woodworking, farming, all different things for folks to do. And my concern with the code compliance when that's not defined. It's 1 mile shall separate. That was in some of the other state rules as well. I mean, I don't understand why 1 mile, why not 2, why not 500 feet. I don't know what parameters were used to discern that. And then on page 6 of 7 in Exhibit C, line 1, it says a statement of the right of temporary housing community inhabitants to stay there without charge. I don't know that we have authority to make that kind of right. Does that mean that somebody from Southern California can come up here and say, I have a right to be here? I don't think we have the capacity to fulfill the need from all around the Pacific Northwest or the rest of the states. Going through the findings of facts when it says on page 2 of 4 that the 158 people died, was the cause because they were unsheltered? I don't know. But it just is, trying to make a case when I want to look more at the facts of things. And it's not going to solve the county's homelessness because, we need to be able to triage a lot of what's happening. We have those who want to live free of responsibility, free to live by the river, free to live by the sunlight and the moonlight. And then you have those that are really in need and we want to help them. But we are not without limitations. And again, in page 2, line 26, 27, it says adequate provisions for housing of all incomes, etc. It's a very subjective term. How do we define that? And again, about removing barriers, we aren't removing barriers for building the houses, which I'll make a case on that. I found the Washington State Department of Commerce 2020 to 2024 consolidated plan. It was a 5-year plan, so it's a 2024 action plan for 2025. And this is from HUD. And they have in their plan consolidated housing. They have federal funding for affordable homes and community development needs administered through the Department of Commerce, which includes reducing homelessness, awards for rent assistance, and approximately 4,000 households with emergency shelter and for 68 homeless units. So there's already, one of many sources that are also paying for the sheltering, in addition to what we're already paying once as constituents, we're paying to the state, we're paying to the feds. And, and just to make a point,
when I was looking, Lehigh has several properties in Bellevue, and I don't know, how those are doing. There was just a report that you have dozens of buildings and tiny homes and villages, and you've been able to receive money from Bellevue and from the Amazon Housing Fund. Amazon Housing Fund seems to have, a lot of ability to do more than what they do. Then I'm looking at the draft for the State of Washington Homeless Housing Strategic Plan 2024 to 2029. And this has specific actions to work towards their vision, which they have put out, and their mission. And I want to, I think their mission and their vision says a lot about this plan, and it's a plan for our citizens. The vision is everyone experiencing homelessness and housing instability has swift and equitable access to stable housing that meets their needs. Who's being displaced so that these needs are met? The mission, Commerce fosters relationships with stakeholders and communities most impacted by homeless to strengthen a collaborative, transparent, effective, and trauma-informed response system that centers racial equity. The guiding principles: we will partner with people with lived experience of homelessness to identify person-centered strategies that promote long-term stability. I'm not certain what person-centered strategies mean, but that's another plan. We will take urgent and bold action to reduce homelessness. We will support interventions that take into account individual need, community context, and best practice. And then 5 objectives are mentioned, and they're very, very complete. It's a society that is being created here. And then also in here it tells how to align with federal strategy. And that's the all-in-one plan. So this was like 100 and some pages, and so I didn't copy it all. But this is also a community designing plan, that homelessness is a global pandemic, soaring housing costs, which we know, and they have all these strategies and all these plans that require inexorbitant amounts of money. And I know we're already, 36.5 trillion in federal debt. And the deficit is more. And then in addition to finding that, I found the blueprint for a just and equitable future, and learning that there is a market slowdown in the housing that we need to house people. And I want to go back to, historically, there has been, I would say, a deliberate suppression of building homes across the country, because that keeps prices up. And I'm looking in 80s, 90s, there are people with more history on that. And then when I look at the onerous regulations that are put on builders now in making the price of a home, when you have 30, 40, 50,000 just in permits, you're not getting a house. And so our ability to have the homes, which I'm coming up on where that's the real problem. And this blueprint is for an equitable future, the 10-year plan to dismantle poverty in Washington State, because poverty and homelessness are connected. And Governor Inslee's Poverty Reduction Work Group recently released its 10-year plan to dismantle poverty. And it has, the first paragraph I thought was telling, it says, Washington is transforming into a state where everyone has their foundational needs met and can access opportunities to reach their full potential in life. And I just didn't know government could design your life for you. And you can access the 10-year action plan kit on what they want to do and how that is being planned out with its core concepts. So then when I found my articles on homelessness as a housing problem, this is by 2 guys are from Pierce County. And they informed, I believe, that the, which group was it? The Homeless Housing Plan, Greg Colburn and Clayton Page Aldern. And it has housing market conditions such as cost and availability of rental housing offer a more convincing explanation. Rent levels and rental vacancy rates are associated with regional rates of homelessness, because they were noticing that a lot of the homelessness was more to a city, versus, let's see, I think it was regional. Let's see, vacancy rates are associated with regional rates of homelessness. And it was an interesting study when rates are much higher in Seattle than in Chicago. Instead, housing market conditions such as cost and availability of rental housing offered the more convincing explanation. So that was an interesting, quick little report. It was a book. I did not purchase the book. And again, I found another article, The Problem. This was from National Low-Income Housing Coalition, that said we need 6.8 million more affordable housing units. The shortage gets worse every year. Housing is key to reducing intergenerational poverty and increasing economic mobility. Shortage of affordable housing costs the American economy $2 trillion per year in lower wages and productivity. The GDP would have been 13.5% higher between 1964 and 2009 if housing wasn't suppressed. And this has very interesting information. Then I looked up and I found Steve Theringer, Representative Theringer, national problem, cost of housing and increase in homelessness. One cause, market isn't building enough housing units. Every $100 rent increase is known to boost the number of folks on the streets. Tied to the workforce shortage, money can't move to Port Angeles for a job when they don't have a place to live. The harder problem is to solve chronic homelessness. Research, 70% of these cases involve SUDs, mental illness, or significant disability. In 2022, over $225 million in the budget for providing expanded programs, outreach, and diversion. So this is from the state rep. And I'll also mention, I'd been at a meeting at PLU, and I think it was then Congressman Denny Hack was there, and he gave a speech. And his big thing, too, was the lack of housing. That is the problem. And then I want to note that, Spokane is going to have pop-up scattered site homeless shelter model that they are going to try. It's an application with Empire Health Foundation and Revive, and I don't know who that organization is. But Spokane has spent roughly $10 million on keeping the Trent shelter open the last few years, but estimate the note will cost up to $8 million more to close it. And it's just a lot of expense here. NPR homelessness hits record high December 2023. We simply don't have enough homes people can afford. Homelessness has been rising since 2017. Housing supply and the drivers of homelessness. This is where I learned about the White House initiative, All In, the federal strategic plan to prevent and end homelessness. The red state. Housing market slowdown signals broader economic troubles, tightening money supply 2022 to 2023, increased mortgage rates from 3.7% from 3% to 7%. Home sales index went to a lower point. So here we have high mortgages, which are...
Councilmember Coover, is there much more?
Not much more.
How much more?
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Denver Mayor goal to shelter 1,000 was achieved. Plans to provide shelter for another 1,000 in 2024. Very interesting article on that. Housing First and Homelessness, the Rhetoric and the Reality. The Executive Summer Movement to end homelessness, in which hundreds of communities participated. Key finding, housing is not the same treatment. Housing First records record at promoting employment and addressing social isolation for the homeless is also weaker than its record at promoting residential stability. And then I have examples of different grants that are also in the thousands of dollars that are for the purpose. So I just want to say, when I go through all this, I look at my responsibility as representative of the district. It is my role to protect working families from government overreach and overspending and bank-breaking regulatory controls. It's my job to do that. And years ago, I heard a speaker say that, if the solution to a problem is illegal, immoral, or unaffordable, it's not a solution. And I find this to be extremely unaffordable. So it's not because we aren't caring about this difficult season that people are in, but we have a problem in our financial capacity in order to solve this. And so what is being asked of my constituents in this? So we're already in a debtor's prison. People are living off their credit cards at a 25% and 30% interest rate. And when we really want to address that, where is the state and the feds in protecting from having all of these people coming in that it's not that we don't want to help, but how can we do that? But I just want to be able to validate why I make my decisions. It's not without research on it. It's not without careful thought, and it's not for a lack of caring. So just please understand there's a lot more to this than just putting in money for a temporary homeless site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Morrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the conversation that has taken place. I also appreciate the testimonies that have been brought forward. And, I understand where a lot of the testimony is coming from. I've worked hard on this council to make sure that we uphold process and we abide by the same rules that we put on everybody else out there. For 6 years now, I think Councilmember Campbell was on the council. 6 years, 2 years of CARES Act dollars, 4 years of American Rescue Plan dollars have been pushed out into the community. A lot of it within Tacoma. I would say over $50 million we've invested. And we have put our money where our mouth is. And we've invested, yes, some of that is in congregate shelters. That was the quickest way to stand things up. And we invested heavily in that. Now we're talking about a debate on process. I'm going to read something here. Please indulge me. I won't take a whole lot of time. But when we talk about ordinances and changes in code and regulations, we had an earlier code change, 53-9S, and it was stated that it's been in the works for about a year now to work those code changes through. And there's a reason why things take a long time within government. I come from the private sector. I don't agree with it, but I'm starting to go, okay, risk avert, risk avert, risk avert. So I'm learning to have that term thrown at me all the time. But one of the things that we talked about is, I know the Good Neighbor Village has been brought up a couple of times, but this is the typical process of which a code change goes through. And I'm just going to run down, yes, there are a lot of them, but I will try to be succinct. Normal code change takes anywhere from 6 to 12 months. Okay, develop and socialize concepts with key stakeholders. Solicit early public feedback for controversial topics. Draft legislation, initial staff report, initial SME. I had to look up what SME was, and it's subject matter experts. And legal review, director and executive team review, revised legislation and staff reports, final SME and legal review, notice of commerce, and joint base Lewis McChord. I will also put in there that it does conduct additional public engagements if needed. It takes a full SEPA environmental review and notification, appeal period and adjudication, planning commission study session, planning hearing and recommendation, final revision of legislation and staff report, prepare final and equitable and equity analysis, EDS legislation package submittal and review by Director of Finance and executive teams, rules and operation committee scheduling, council committee public hearing and recommendations, council public hearing and final action, executive action, develop procedures, form guides, conduct staff training on implementation, and then customer service and community education. When this ordinance came to us 4 weeks ago, it came as an emergency ordinance. This council had less than a week to review it. And the justification was, we have an emergency, we need to pass an ordinance. Okay, that's fine. Obviously, some on this council did not think it rose to the level of emergency ordinance. Then 4 weeks later, we have an interim ordinance. We had council prep, one committee meeting, and now we're at a council meeting. It's been brought up a couple times about Lehigh. Lehigh has an agreement with the county for a homeless shelter. It states in here exactly what you will do. You agreed to that. It talks about the loan agreement, promissory notes, low-income housing affordability covenant, and the deed of trust. It also goes into what your purpose is, what you agreed to in the RFP. The RFP was sent out in 2023, closed in 2024. It says, the funding authorization by this appropriation shall only be used for acquisition, construction, site, and property improvements of a property listed in section 1.3 of this exhibit, and shall be contingent upon the execution of this agreement between the beneficiary and the county regarding the use and distribution of said funds. The shelter will be exclusively for the occupancy of qualified populations as defined by below. Qualifications: the unit shall be exclusively used for individual or households who are homeless as defined by HUD. This agreement provides funding to acquire developed property to be used for a tiny home village with 50 units, providing shelter for up to 60 people as defined in section 1.11. Funding shall be utilized to acquire developed property as described in Table 2 in Section 3.1 for the purpose. No funding for this provision of services shall be provided until this agreement. The agreement provides for funding of the property acquisition and construction of 50 tiny home units, providing shelter for up to 60 individuals. Individuals located at 415 through 419 208th Street East, Spanaway. The agreement was signed on January 19th, 2024, where things were closed. County, through ARPA funding, paid $1.750, that's $1,750,000 for a piece of property that is assessed at $931,000. Construction was to start on May 1st, 2024. Construction completed by August 15th, 2024. It also says in the agreement that you will abide by all codes and obtain necessary permits required by Pierce County. I would assume you did due diligence and looked at what the requirements in the code was when you signed this agreement almost 8 months ago. It's almost like a bait and switch now, and I agree that there is a paragraph in there that you can convert it to affordable housing in 2 years. There's nothing in this agreement that says temporary shelters, emergency shelters. So I'm a little concerned that, and I will say that this agreement was signed by Heather Moss, it was signed by Gary Robinson, and it was signed by Bruce Dammeier. $2,599,865.84 to build a homeless shelter on the property that was mentioned at earlier. So I'm setting that aside and saying that the process in which we're following, I think, is a little bit flawed. Tacoma has had an emergency for 11 years now. Their stability site is not temporary. It's been there for well over a decade. So when we start talking about temporary shelters, the ability to extend the fact that we may not get our funding for permanent affordable housing, I don't know how long this is going to go on. So I am concerned about what we expect out of the Good Neighbor Village to build a permanent, that they have to go through all the hoops and hurdles to get that thing done because they are a permanent facility and they're following shared housing code. So I understand that we need more shelters. I also understand that being sustainable within the budget that we have, every site I go to, and I've gone from Portland all the way up to Seattle, the number one problem is permanent supportive housing. And, you know, there again, it takes long because of the requirements that are there. You know, maybe this council should accelerate the building code to make permanent housing streamlined so that way they can get permits within a reasonable amount of time without paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for their permits. So at this point in time, I'm not willing to circumvent a normal process and for a piece of property that we currently have a contract for, and it's been signed off by all the individuals, including all Lehighs, and you know, all they need to do is implement it. But obviously, they found out that, wow, you got to go through a lot in this county to get a permit, and I agree. I hear it every day from my developers, my builders. You got to go through a lot. There's a lot of safeguards that have been placed in there, and I'm saying if you're willing to go through that process, fine. I'm willing to support that, but not to accelerate it on an agreement that everyone agreed to, and now we're walking backwards on that agreement. So, thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all you got. And Ms. Perkins, thank you for the offer on the T-shirt, but yeah.
Mr. Kimball.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to be brief.
I think one of the first council meetings I ever attended, one of the council members who was leaving, who said the thing about politics is that when all is said and done, more is said than done. And I think that approach is here too. Lots of great reasons not to do this have come up, and they're all issues we need to work on. But we need to work on everything, everywhere, all at once. You've heard me say this before. I've been saying this for years. And we can't wait until everything falls into a perfect line before we move forward. We've got to keep moving forward on what is in front of us at the time. I found out yesterday that some of my colleagues didn't know that I wasn't supportive of the community village concept. I think there were things in there that concerned me, and I wanted to make sure that we addressed. I didn't need to get flown down to Austin and see it firsthand to know that's what was needed in this community. I think the biggest failing we're seeing out there is, and I asked for it at the time, I wanted 3 to be starting simultaneously. And maybe after 1 year, the one that wasn't working the best would drop off and we continue forward. But to be one and done, and we were told earlier, oh, it's the pilot. We it's replicable. We can do more because we're going to need more. As a matter of fact, to address what we need to be opened up about 1 a month every month, just to kind of get to a stability point from what we're having coming in. And obviously, we're not on a pace to do that. But we're just not moving forward is not an option, or waiting till we fully align with the city and the state and the federal government and the world and every thinker and every person, waiting for it all to come into crystalline alignment, then we're just not going to go anywhere. And maybe we just need to be honest and say that it's not interesting for us. A lot of what I saw in this code is that it just lets others help. There's a lot of talk about we can't do all this alone. This provided the opportunity for churches to get more involved and other organizations to step in and be allowed to do their part or that which their mission calls them to do. Shouldn't have to change churches to be able to serve homeless people. If you want to do it at your church, you should have the opportunity to do that. I've been fortunate. I've been a member of a church for a long time that has done more for homeless than I think any other church in Pierce County. St. Leo's downtown. I mean, they literally build shelter. They've long before anyone else, they were building shelters on their own property. And it just seems we can be doing so much more. And to me, some of my criticism of this is maybe it doesn't go far enough. I mean, we need so much more simultaneously. And so I'm just going to wrap up with a quote that I read this last week. Solving chronic homeless issues is hard and defies easy answers. That is why we need to be smart and invest in proven solutions that get results. When I discuss chronic homelessness, I'm referring to the people who are trapped, living on our streets in squalor, many with untreated mental illness and addiction. Most have been on the street for years, some committing crime, most being victimized by crime. It is inhumane and unacceptable for anyone. I think a lot of us can agree with that statement. It comes from Bruce Danmeyer in his latest blog. It's the lead-in comment. Earlier, I put forward an amendment that this is, because I thought we were all closer to being on the same team than apart. When I said that I wanted to add that we are all concerned about this, is I thought it would just be a quick unanimous yes, and I'd say, see, we do agree on something, that it's important. I think it was mistaken a little bit for what it was. But I do believe that all of us want to do something. And so if you're not going to be here on this, please come to our committee that we set up to deal with this and come with some of the issues that we need to be solving. Let's knock this one down. Let's knock that one down. Let's knock that one down. We know there's 1,000 barriers out there, and we can't wait till we can clear all 1,000 at once to move forward. But we can clear those that are in front of us, and I'm willing to take on the others. But you got to bring it forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Campbell. Well, I really want to thank our hardworking staff team who's helped us move forward with this solution. When we were told by Low Income Housing Institute that they went through a competitive process through the county to respond to a notice of funding availability to build non-congregate shelter, kind of a wonky term, non-congregate shelter, meaning you get your own little private space. You're not sleeping on cots right next to the next person. You get a little bit of privacy, a little bit of dignity. That's what we mean by non-congregate. We're not all congregated together. You have a little bit of privacy in a non-congregate setting. We, the county, put out a notice of funding availability to say we learned through the pandemic that non-congregate shelter, a little bit of privacy and dignity, is what folks will take. Those seeking, those who are unsheltered, that is what they will take. That's what they need to get a little bit of dignity back, to get their space, to get their stability, and to find their next step forward. So we heard that loud and clear, and that's why we put out a notice of funding availability for this very thing. Lehigh, luckily, responded. They've been doing so much good in this community and other communities in Puget Sound, and we are so grateful that you are willing to do this incredibly hard work in the face of so much opposition, so much dehumanization, so much made-up confusion, and made-up roadblocks. It's really unfortunate, but you figure out how to prevail. And you responded. You got the award. We signed a contract. You bought the land with the money. The money's already spent. Right? This is not about appropriating new money. I think there's been some mischaracterizations about what's going on. This is not a funding bill. There's no funding attached to this bill. This is not a funding bill. This is a land use bill that paves the way for Lehigh to do what they want to do, and for other communities like churches and other nonprofits to be able to follow these rules of the road with these guardrails to safely, in a well-managed way, set up tiny home villages. That's what this is about. It's a land use bill. It's not a funding bill. I'm glad we did use already spent American Rescue Plan Act dollars, already spent it, because we said to ourselves when we were spending American Rescue Plan Act money, we said to ourselves, we want to come out of the pandemic better than we went into it. And there's a lot of things we've done to come out of the pandemic better than we went into it. One of those things is to facilitate non-congregate shelter, because we know it helps get people off the street and onto their way into more permanent housing options. That's an example of getting out of the pandemic better than we went into it. And as Ms. Lee, the director of Lehigh, shared earlier, they have this model of utilizing land in a positive way while they're waiting the years it takes to build permanent supportive housing, instead of watching it grow weeds and lay fallow. So we've already spent this money. They're already funded to do this. They already bought the land, right? Folks watching this debate, it is silly. The average person watching this, and I've talked to many dozens of people over the past couple of months about this debate, and it is silly. The average person just thinks we're absolutely silly, that we're putting ourselves in a pretzel to figure out how to say no to moving people off the street in unsheltered scenarios in order to try to move them to shelter. They absolutely think that this is silly. I think it's silly too. I'm really grateful that Lehigh is willing to do this work. And again, this is a land use bill that allows others to be able to mimic the model without any money from the public necessarily, be able to mimic the model and open their door to more shelter. And that's what we are trying to pave the way in a well-managed way. Look, the other irony of this is about money. So several of my colleagues have brought up about the need for more money for the system, the homelessness response system. Our own comprehensive plan to end homelessness has noted how underfunded historically our homelessness response system truly is. One piece of evidence of that, and we bear down on this at our Select Committee on Homelessness this last week. Vice Chair Campbell leads our Select Committee on Homelessness. He led a deep dive review of why a major committee of the county that's known as the Continuum of Care. The Continuum of Care brings together many subject matter experts, cities and towns in the county, providers and lay people. It's this term of art that the Housing and Urban Development uses at the federal level called the Continuum of Care. And you know what? When we did an exhaustive review in the Select Committee on Homelessness, it demonstrated that a peer county, Snohomish County, gets $16 million a year directly from HUD to fund homelessness interventions. They get $16 million a year. A peer county, a little bit smaller than us, a peer county. We get 4. Snohomish gets 16 million. We get 4. Why do we get so fewer dollars from HUD? We dissected that very question. One of the many reasons why our application in front of Housing and Urban Development, why we don't score well, is because we don't have enough non-congregate shelter. And it was identified that this very project that we're trying to pave the way for, and others, not just this one, and others, is the reason our score is so low. And the reason why we've been stuck at $4 million for years and years, while peer counties like Snohomish get quadruple the amount of money we get. So I heard some of our council members say, where are we going to find the money to continue these kinds of operations? Well, friends, that is how. By actually scoring well and doing what HUD says you need to do in order to score well, they'll give us more money. Our staff showed us how, and doing more non-congregate shelter, and specifically this project, is exactly how to get more money from the federal government to do this. So it is silly that we're having this debate. Absolutely silly. But it's silly and it's sad. More people are going to die because we're not able to get people out of shelter, out of harm's way, and out of weather. More encampments, more unsanctioned encampments will persist in the woods, in business districts, on sidewalks, in open spaces, if this bill doesn't get signed into law. Fewer people will be able to be found. Fewer people will be able to be found and led to service because you can't find them, because they're swept from this part, to that place, to that place. So they can't be found to be able to give the treatment and the services to be able to get to the next step in their life and more stability. So it's silly and it's sad. I don't know why this has turned as controversial as it is. It makes no sense. Interim regulations are a tool that this council and many legislative bodies across Washington state use all the time for all kinds of purposes. This is not a newfound gotcha workaround to get out of things and make people's life difficult. People use interim regulations. Cities and towns and counties use interim land use regulations, which we're passing tonight, all the time. We've done it too over the last 15 years on things like how to regulate marijuana cannabis shops. What are the regulations about billboards? We've used a similar land use tool for the for-profit development community so they can make more money on things called planned development districts and a whole bunch of other things. We've used this land use tool to do all kinds of things over the past 15 years. And here we are, the majority is trying to bring forward using this exact same land use tool in order to help address very meaningfully one of the most pressing crises facing our entire county. And folks don't seem to want to use this tool that's used so often on something so humane and so important. Look, I want to build affordable housing just as much as the others say they do. 5 of the members up here voted for the Maureen Howard Affordable Housing Act. 5 of the 7 voted for the Maureen Howard Affordable Housing Act. We were very serious about building affordable housing at this council. We got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We got to be able to both build affordable housing, build permanent supportive housing, and move people out of the streets, out of unsheltered encampments, and into temporary housing communities so they can better themselves, stabilize, and then ready themselves for permanent supportive housing. It is a myth that anyone that you move out of the street can just move into their own apartment even if it existed tomorrow. That is a myth. And I know members know that. I know most members know that. It is a myth. Folks who are unsheltered, many exhibiting all kinds of trauma and crisis, they are not ready to be alone yet. They need that stepping stone. We've been educated by that, by subject matter experts time and time again, that places like tiny home villages with case management and supports are the right step for so many while they stabilize and then ready themselves for the next step. This is not either or. The world does not work in an either or way. The world works in a both and way. We need to both build appropriate non-congregate shelter that people will accept, people that will get people out of the elements. We must do that. The experts tell us that. We've gotten countless emails, letters, testimony from people who do this for a living, who know better than us, who know much better than us, who told us that this is the tool that's needed and that we need to do both. We need to do both, move people into villages like tiny home villages that are well regulated, and build affordable housing and permanent supportive housing. So I'm for both. I really hope this council is for both. I hope the county executive who needs to sign this bill after tonight is for both. People's lives are at stake. Meaningfully addressing the homelessness crisis is at stake. And moving more people to success is at stake. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on ordinance 2024-540, yes.
Councilmember Krueger?
Nay.
Councilmember Denson?
Aye.
Councilmember Herrera?
Nay.
Councilmember Hitchin?
Aye.
Councilmember Morrell?
No.
Councilmember Campbell?
Aye.
Councilmember Mello?
Aye.
The results of the roll call vote is 4 ayes and 3 nays.
On a vote of 4 ayes and 3 nays, the ordinance is adopted and sent to the county executive. Thank you. On a vote of 4 ayes and 3 nays, the ordinance is adopted and sent to the county executive for his signature.
Thank you.
Thank you for being part of the solution. We're going to move to other business because that is where we pulled off some agenda items from the consent agenda. We pulled 4 actions on grant awards. We briefed on 4 different grants, as we always do at our study session, realizing that the public doesn't always follow our study sessions because they happen smack dab in the middle of the day. There are 4 grant awards, one for home energy assistance to the Washington State Department of Commerce, one for human services, it's a strengthening emergency food response grant through the State Department of Agriculture, another for tree giveaways and tree planting that through the Washington State Department of Natural Resources, and a 4th grant seeking our approval to proceed from the U.S. Department of Agriculture for composting and food waste reduction. There's backup material in our packet, and before we ask staff to do a briefing, if that's what members wish to do, we will certainly do that. But before I ask staff to go through that, let me see if members have questions or comments and if there's any of these that we can dispose of. Vice Chair Campbell.
Actually, what I want to understand is our procedure here. Are we going to need an individual motion on each one to be voted in?
I think so.
Mr. Cox? Is it?
I don't believe you do. You've got them all assembled under, excuse me. You got them all assembled under one single section, and it isn't an action that normally requires anything other than collective approval, and I think you can do that as a batch, yes.
But we will need a motion to adopt the...
Yes, to approve the action on the grant awards. Make a motion to approve subsection D, granting applications listed 1 through 4.
Let me know when you want a motion to get that on the record for discussion.
Thank you, Vice Chair Campbell. Councilmember Krueger.
Thank you, Chair. Are they something that could be a voice vote, or must they be roll call?
Final action, we would need a roll call vote. Okay. So are there any of these that a member wishes to have more discussion about, or are there any Vice Chair, Councilmember Morell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I would like to have more discussion. I would like to have a plan on what Parks is going to do pertaining to the planting along the Foothills Trail. The other day when it was a study session, I requested an area map, and as of right now, I don't have that. Also, I have some questions pertaining to one of the issues that was brought up was survivability. Who's going to maintain these trees? Our Parks Department maintenance staff is overworked right now, and I don't want to add anything more unless there's a plan in place. So that was my concern on the tree Department of Agriculture issue.
Thank you. Ms. Stone from our Pierce County Parks and Recreation Services Department, thank you for hanging tight to the end of this meeting and making yourself available. Ms. Stone, are you there to address some of these questions?
Yes, I am. I am here. Yes, I'm here.
So you participated in the discussion we had at study session. I believe you said you don't have a map. You're still in the conceptual stage. Maybe that's not the right term, but you don't have a map, I think is what you said. But maybe you can say a little bit more about the area, more information you have in the planning, and then a little bit more about survivability plan, please.
Well, absolutely. So the area we're looking at planting is going to be between the Puyallup Trailhead and the McMillan Trailhead in the Alderton community. We don't have a full plan and laid out at this time. We got to be very careful about this, and I really want to make sure we get the right trees in the right place so we don't damage the trail, don't cause any root issues. And also we do invasive control, use the trees to help counter that to make it an enjoyable or just improve that section of the trail. And I really want to make sure we do that carefully and right. So I will definitely provide and work with in developing a map showing these tree locations and species. And we hope to get that underway in September and October before planting in the winter under this grant. Regarding survivability, that's always a tough one and a challenge. My hope is to pull as much work off our maintenance staff as possible. Working with our conservation crew, we have a Washington conservation crew that's working with Pierce County underneath us, and they're already working on tree watering within our parks. We'll also be working with the Foothills Trail Coalition. They're supporting us on this project and coming up in agreement. So hopefully the intent is that as we move forward, we can create a team that's going to be watching and monitoring these trees for the first 3 years. We understand completely that we're going to have losses. That is going to happen with any tree planting project. But the overall goal is to find the right trees, right place for that stretch in between.
Thank you, Ms. Stone. Further questions or comments, Councilmember Morell?
Yeah, one of the other concerns that I have, Ms. Stone, is also making sure you engage with the property owners along that corridor because, they value their fields. And I think Councilmember Campbell indicated about some of the challenges. Even if you pull the trees off the trail, the roots end up going into the fields, and the farmers have a challenge cultivating their areas. So, like I say, I'm just a little bit concerned that we're getting the cart before the horse on this particular issue. So, thank you.
You are absolutely right, Councilmember Morell, which is why I really want to make sure we do it right in laying out the trees and their locations so that when we do there, we find the right tree and place. We are not going to be putting anything there's some narrow stretches there. So it's not going to be a completely lined. It's going to be in areas where Pierce County Parks, where we have the width, where we can place these trees, do the invasive removal. I do not want to put anything near farms or any area where they can be infringing on causing additional problems in there. It's not only the roots, but also I don't want to shade farmers or farmland, and I don't want leaves and debris from our trees going into farmers and farmlands. So yes, definitely community outreach and careful planning.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Stone, and I will hold you to that. But like I say, I just do not want our overworked park maintenance staff to be involved in having to water plants on top of everything they have to maintain along that 20 miles of trails. So great if you can get a nonprofit, someone else to do it. I'm all for that. So anyway, those are my questions. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Stone.
Absolutely.
You have a further response or further information for Councilmember Morell?
Also, Councilmember Morell, as we move forward with this, I would definitely open to do a bike ride with you along that and show you what our plans are, as always. And of course, the North Region will not let me put anything that's going to increase their maintenance level.
Okay, I'll hold you to that bike ride. Remember, the speed limit's 20 miles an hour along that trail, so we'll see if I can go under that without you giving me a ticket. So thank you. I appreciate the offer.
Thanks for the questions. Are there any other questions about any of this grant or any of the other grants that are up for Vice Chair Kimball?
Thank you, Chair. Just following up on the one that Councilmember Morell brought up and just trying to understand, do you do all the work to write the plan, like where each tree is going to go, and then apply for a grant? Or do we apply for grants and see if we're going to get funding and then spend the detailed time deciding where it's going to go? How do we do that push-pull?
So lucky for us, this money's already been dedicated. So this isn't applying for the grant. DNR has already said, here is this money. We want you to go invest in these communities and do community greening. So the money's already on the table for us. And this is one of the communities and projects that they were very interested in working with us and supporting. So we're not going to go and do all this work without, say, making sure that it's already in a process and that the funding is secure.
Okay. Thank you very much for spending your afternoon, evening, and nighttime with us.
Sure.
Thank you. Councilmember Krueger.
Thank you, Chair. My reason for wanting to pull these is I'm just seeing so many grant applications being made and having to be dependent upon grants for keeping things alive. And the Energy Assistant Program, even though no match is required and you don't want to leave money on the table, I guess I kind of question in all the many different programs that have funding for this and how many times the constituents are paying for the same thing over and over. And I don't know if we should have, I don't know if there is some kind of a policy on how we approach all of these grants, or at what point does the state, when they run out of money. I'm just concerned with folks. There's an expectation that, well, we'll just have the government fix my house. They have this program, and we've been doing this, I don't know how, since I've been here. And what does it, the obligation to continuously do these, I just question the role of government in these kinds of repairs. What do you say?
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Krueger.
Thank you, Chair. Well, on the food waste reduction program, so that is over in Purdy, if I understand, the 400. And when I remember asking on that, it was like, then what? So we have this program, and what would the expense be if the farmers are, taking leftover produce over the bridge? I just question the logic on that. And then that would be that would be it for my questions or comments.
Is that Mr. Brown? I don't know if there's a question in there, but Is there a question in there, Councilmember Cruver?
Well, what was the plan, the future plan beyond this pilot program on how having something over on the other side of the bridge is beneficial to the county as a whole?
Thank you. Mr. Brown, can you address that question?
I can try. Councilmember Cruver, I think the plan after the pilot is if this happens to work and it's doing exactly what we're hoping it's going to do, is that we can potentially put something maybe at the Hidden Valley Transfer Station, working with LRI. There may be some other opportunities over on this side as well. Right now, this Purdy being our biggest county-owned transfer station was why we chose that location.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Denson.
Yes, thank you. I know we just had this discussion and we talk about a lot of things, but I just want to remind everyone, in addition to the points that Mr. Brown just made about Purdy being the largest county transfer station, they are really the leader in addressing food waste. Thanks to our Department of Sustainability under Planning and Public Works, they're doing great work with their composting. I was just there a couple weeks ago. This pilot is so exciting. It's adding to our efforts to reduce food waste in Pierce County. And another reason that this is so great is I'll remind folks that the food coming to this digester is not coming off of farmers' fields. It's coming in this pilot from Tacoma Boys, which is it's like a little market. It's like a fruit and vegetable stand. So this is like a little grocery. It's right on the side of the Purdy Spit. It's adorable. It's very popular in the community. They're awesome community partners. And they are partnering with the county, which, I'm extremely thankful for, to reuse, to digest, I suppose is a better term, what they would normally throw away. All that wasted, really nutritious, good stuff that is going to be turned into a product that will go and benefit our farmers in the end. So we're going to learn from this. I'm very proud that this is happening in District 7. I'm excited to see the results and hopefully have it spread throughout the county. And I think it will be a model for other places as well. It's good government work. So thank you so much, Mr. Brown, for your leadership on this.
Thank you. Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to kind of go through the list of these and hoping that we are supporting all of these grants. I think anytime we can find resources outside of our county, it makes a lot of sense to the money's there. It's been allocated by some sub-agency or some government, and if we don't take it, someone else will. So when we talk about reducing people entering homelessness, when families have to choose between paying their rent, paying for food, and paying for staying warm, they will often choose to go without warmth, and people can really struggle. And this is something that will allow us to keep people housed. It's just one of the things that we need to do. We didn't actually talk about the second one, so don't worry about that one. The tree giveaway and the parks program, I really feel like this would be an asset along the trail, especially if we're removing blackberry. It's already there. While blackberries are delightful to eat, the ones that can get out of control right now, like the ones that are creeping over from my neighbor's yard, which has a conversation coming soon. But this idea that we would replace it with a shade tree, some sort of tree that's going to help us and is not invasive, I think is always a good thing if we're trying to improve habitat. And then trees in Parkland, super excited about that one. The last one, I don't know how many people shifted to putting your food waste in your yard waste, but I have mentally been tracking how many fewer garbage bags I use. I used to go through 2 or 3 garbage bags a week, and I live alone. I don't have kids. So there's not a lot of people. I know it was a lot, but it was a lot of food waste. And now I'm like 1. Like I get to the end of the week and we're supposed to take the garbage out, and I'm like, did I even change the bag once? And it's because there's nothing in there that's smelly, because there's no there's no food. And so figuring out other ways to encourage businesses to do this, our agricultural communities to do this, I think is a fantastic. And pilots are the way to try new things and see if they work. If it's an epic fail, we didn't lose any money because we didn't pay for this. We are piloting this to see if it works, and then we can learn and grow, or just say nope and try something else. So just hoping we have support on all of these. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Cruver.
Hey, thank you, Chair. I'm glad you ended with that, because my question would be, is there a reason the free market is not working on that, on an anaerobic digester? Do you know?
Mr. Brown, is it startup costs and early investment, or what do you understand?
A lot of it is, yeah. Depending on the size of the digester, they are incredibly costly. We are looking at one. The one we're targeting is will handle approximately 40 tons a year for this pilot program. But Divert just put in a facility down in Longview, I believe, that's going to handle about 100,000 tons. But in order to get that project up and running, it's I want to say it was about $80 million. So it's a significant burden as far as the startup costs to some of these to really get going with a digester.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the time to discuss this. I don't begrudge the grants. I just question sometimes the constant dollars. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, again, thank you, both council staff and department staff, for staying much later than you anticipated today to make yourself available to answer council questions. We're grateful to your expertise and your time. Vice Chair Campbell, for a motion, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to make a motion to adopt subsection D, items 1 through 4 that were pulled off the consent agenda.
Good. Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda, item D 1 through 4. This is the final action item, so I will open this up for a public hearing on consent agenda item C, subsection D as in David, items 1 through 4, these grant authorization awards. There are no members of the public here in council chambers. Mr. Dominique, anybody in the Zoom room?
For any member of the public that would like to provide comment on any of the 4 grant applications, please press the raise hand icon in Zoom or star 9 on your telephone keypad. And we have one hand at this time, Chair. It is Terry Hurd. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
I'm Terry Hurd. I've listened to what you had to say. Are you addressing the issues of the county or a city that should be addressed plainly and clearly, separating the two? I have to say, after listening to all of this, I'm very confused as to what's going on between what you're trying to achieve and what your requirements are. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing on these 4 grant authorization requests to authorize staff to move forward. Are there any other members of the public wanting to participate in the public comment? Mr. Dominique, anybody else in the Zoom room?
I don't see any other hands at this time, Chair.
With no further hands, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. I have one member absent or not in chambers who asked us to hold this over. I'm tempted to wait until that member comes back in the chambers who asked us to hold this over, but maybe I won't. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on this consent agenda item?
Councilmember Denson.
Aye.
Councilmember Herrera.
Aye.
Councilmember Hitchin.
Aye.
Councilmember Morell.
Excused.
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Cruver.
Aye.
Councilmember Mello.
Aye.
The results of the roll call vote is 6 ayes and 0 nays.
On a vote of 6 ayes and 0 nays. On a vote of 6 ayes and 0 nays, the consent agenda item D 1 through 4. Did I close the vote already? Yes. On a vote of 6 ayes and 0 nays, the consent agenda is adopted. We're going to come back to community forum, and then we'll go back to other business and announcements. We are in community forum. There are still no members of the public here in council chambers, but for those of you on Zoom, community forum is an opportunity for members of the public to address the council on any topic that is of significance to or affecting Pierce County government and that did not appear for final action on today's agenda. So if it was already on for final action, our rules of procedure state that you cannot have those comments during community forum. There is a 3-minute time limit. Please state your name if you would like it on the record and address all comments to the chair. Mr. Dominique, is there anybody in the Zoom room?
Yes, sir. We have one hand at this time. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, County Council members, thank you for listening to me again. Time and again, I listen to the council dealing with issues that the Growth Management Act clearly defined as city issues that should be addressed by the city. One of the glaring things that I see is time and again, the growth areas of the city have not been defined by the cities. They have been abrogated or dumped on the county to come up with something that they were never addressed or capable of addressing. We of the county have addressed numerous times the infrastructure requirements of a city and the funding that was supposed to come from the city, the planning that was supposed to come from the city, to either become a city or be annexed into a city. Why are you continuing to address those issues without addressing the cities that are supposed to be the primary partner of these issues that we are dealing with? I won't go into all the things that we don't have out here in the growth management area or beyond the growth management area that are being denied by the refusal of the county to consider the fact that people live beyond 224th. We don't have the roads, we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the sewers, we don't have the water that we can depend upon. There are so many things that should have been partnered with the cities and their expected growth management areas for their expansion. Why are you denying the fact that the state isn't going to step in, especially on the big issue of a single source aquifer, that these cities are not fulfilling their obligations? Please push back and make the cities responsible for city level development. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no more hands at this time, Chair.
With no further hands, we'll close the community forum portion of our meeting. We're back to other business and announcements in section 11. Are there any other business or announcements by council members? Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. Councilmember Kruger and yourself, Chair Mello, were at the opening of the improvements at Sprinkler Rec. If anyone has kids or if you're young at heart, everybody should go out and see it. They really did a nice an excellent job of creating spaces for an entire family. You have things and activities for teens, from reopening Spire Rock and our trails, and paved paths for skateboards, rollerblades. They were rollerblading through our speeches. It was quite entertaining. And then the playground that really is something for a variety of different levels, from the little wobbles to teens that think they're still should be on playgrounds, which they can. And then the adult fitness court is just an amazing thing. I've seen more kids on it, though. I went back on Sunday. And so, but if you are looking for a way to walk and get a full body workout for free, it is now available at Sprinker from sunup to sundown. So along with several sports that I still don't understand, and maybe I will just have to try them, like futsal and the curved table soccer thing that I forget the name of, but I figured out it was soccer, and I was like, really? Think about ping pong, but with soccer on a table. It's really interesting. Anywho, so just encouraging anyone who has some free time to go out to Sprinker. It's pretty darn cool. Thanks.
Thanks for noting that, Councilmember Hitchin, and really glad that you were able to get the award on behalf of the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department. You all gave an award to the Pierce County Council for the many improvements at Sprinker that allow people to live healthier lives. You were able to give that award to the Parks and Recreation Services Department at the ceremony this weekend. So if anyone's noticing an award was missing, you know, that someone didn't just, there wasn't a thief, Councilmember Hitchin was able to deliver it to the Parks and Recreation Division. So thank you for that. And it really is phenomenal. There's also, there's so much to see, as you noted. There's an amazing mural that you have to go look at. I won't say where it is. So get yourself there. There's an amazing mural on a piece of equipment that will blow your mind. It's really beautiful, really worth going to take advantage of the many amazing assets and spaces that are created there. Councilor Herrera.
Thank you, Chair. Getting close to that time of year, and if you didn't know about it, in a couple of weeks, kids will be getting to school and they will remind you of it. But in 9 days, 15 hours, 41 minutes, and 8 seconds, the Washington State Fair will open up in Puyallup on August 30th, the Friday. And it's going to go all the way through to September 22nd. So there's lots of activities there. Even some people say it's pretty expensive to do things in there, but there's a lot of free things also inside there to do with families. So just a warning order. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Denson.
Thank you. Just a quick reminder that this Saturday is Airport Day at the Tacoma Narrows Airport from 10 to 4, 10 to 3 or 10 to 4. Go there early. It's going to be awesome. It's so much fun. It is totally free, and there's lots of cool planes to see and activities. So come visit our airport, or one of our airports. And also, if you're a Key Peninsula person or anywhere near, there's a big resource center from 10 to 3 out at the Key Peninsula Civic Center. It's very cool. They've been doing it for years and years. And there is a ton of clothes and shoes and, you know, all sorts of accessories. It's open to anyone. It doesn't matter whether, you know, you're need-based or not. If you need some clothing for yourself, all ages, or your family, it's a really cool community event. There is just tons. I always go shopping, so maybe I will see you there. It's great.
Thanks for the tip. Vice Chair Campbell.
Thank you. Just want to follow up on Councilmember Hitchin's TQ ball. So it's spelled T-E-Q-B-A-L-L. Good to remember for Scrabble players because there's no U. T-E-Q-B-A-L-L. Pronounce it however you want, but it's great for Scrabble.
I might be phoning a friend because I can't remember that one day. Councilor Krueger.
Thank you, Chair. Roy Rodeo, August 31, September 1. So last year, I believe they sold out, so better get there early. They don't pre-sell tickets, so first come, first serve.
Thank you. Lots of really fun activities going on around our community. I don't see any other hands. Mr. Cox, is there any other business for council this evening?
No, sir, there is not.
With no further business before the Pierce County Council, we are adjourned.